That way, I can remember some. I found on my C drive. Thanks. Why?
I can go that way, not down. Down that way. Yeah, I know. I know, but it just maps at the same time.
Yes, I used to do it. That's what the only thing you just have to top table.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally the school class.
Yeah.
Much preferred.
Why is it so wide? Why is it so difficult?
Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee here at Shire Hall. For good housekeeping, we are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you please to ensure that your mobile phone is switched off in order that those watching the live stream know who is speaking? Could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure that members of this committee and all points raised by public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I will now ask members of the committee to introduce themselves and officers, starting with designate.
Hilary Love, Unitary Councillor for Chapman and Craven Arms.
Nigel Lumbey, Councillor for Old Brighton.
Councillor Richard Marshall, Councillor for Worthing. Councillor Tony Parsons, Councillor for Basin Hill, Colin and Sutton.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall, Councillor Paul Brosley.
I really have been ostracised. Easy if I press the right buttons there. Robert Tyndall, I represent Brown Key Division.
Councillor Gwilym Butler, Clidbury Mortimer, substitute for Christian Lee.
Councillor Nick Egnett, representing Regulating Ward. Councillor David Evans, representing Craven Arms area, and also chair this committee.
Miranda Garrard, solicitor.
Tim Rogers, Interim Planning and Development Services Manager.
Graham French, Principal Planner.
Sharon Lawley, Developing Highways Manager.
Okay, we have apologies for absence, please. We have apologies received from Christian Lee and Gwilym Butler substituting, and we have apologies from Nigel Hardy. We have no substitute for Nigel. Right, we have minutes of the last meeting held on the 5th of April 2022. Is there a proposer, please? Thank you. Second. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. And also a meeting on the 12th of May. Where is it for the minutes from there, please? Those minutes are to follow. Okay. Any public questions? No public questions. Disclosure of pecuniary interest or disclosure of interest. Mr. Marsh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be sitting out on item 11, the land near Shipley. Firstly, I am the local member for there, one of the local members, but more importantly, I sit as chairman on the liaison committee, Shipley Quarry Liaison Committee. and to maintain neutrality in that position, I won't be speaking for or against the proposal, nor will I be voting on it.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Tyndall, please.
Yes, I am the ward member for agenda item number 7, so I will say a few words, then I'll go and sit at the back of the room.
Thank you. Any other interest, please? I've got an interest in number 8. The developer is a customer of mine in my shop, so therefore I will not take part and I will leave it. Thank you. Next item is we'd like to bring item number 11, which is land near Shipley, Lisbon Road. We come in after Woodcote, so number 5, then we bring Shipley in after that, and then we carry on the rest of the agenda as it is. Could I have a proposal for that, please? Thank you. Seconder, all in favour of that, please? Thank you. Right, then we now go on to Woodcote Wood, Western East.
Thank you, Chair. Can we move to the next slide? Thanks. So this is a proposal to vary 2 planning applications, conditions attached to them, which govern the operations at the quarry, which commenced operation a couple of years ago. And the eastern side of the quarry, the plant site and the access are covered by different planning consents on the western side, but they mirror the same planning conditions. So we've dealt with the request by the applicant NRS to increase the output as a single report, which covers both applications. The proposal involves an increase in the output level from 250,000 to 400,000 tonnes per annum. And it's predicated on the basis that the company has found additional markets that perhaps it hadn't anticipated fully when the original application was coming through. I think that's sort of good news, as there's a mortar plant at Bilston in particular, which is taking a lot of their material, and hence the existing output level was insufficient for the company to meet its customer demand. So the site, if we can have the next slide, it's approximately 4 kilometres south of Newport in Shropshire, surrounded by coniferous trees, which are plantations to the north and west, and screening belts to the south and east, with the A41 to the east and the B4379 Sheriffhound Road to the south. So anyway, the parish council has objected to the proposals. I don't think we have a representative from the parish council here today, but they did call the application, request the application came to committee, and hence here we are with it. And they're objecting on the basis that there are certain works which were required by the legal agreement accompanying the access permission. The eastern side of the quarry had the legal agreement, and that determined that secured a routing restriction, the payment of a total sum of £50,000 for highway improvements, the gifting of an area of land to the immediate north of the Sheriff House road at its junction with the A41 to allow for future improvements. And there were various planning conditions, including CCTV site entrance to back up the routing requirements. So they contend that these matters have not been fully discharged, and that the improvement works, in particular to the Sheriff House junction, are still awaited. Now we have Gemma Lawley, the highway officer, with us today, and if with your agreement, Chair, I'll ask Gemma just to update the committee on the highway situation. No other objections have been received to this proposal, which the applicant has justified with reference to a road safety audit, which concludes that there are not any safety issues associated with the quarry access, and that conclusion applies also to the proposed increase in upwards. They do refer to the fact that there are deterioration of highway carriageway on the A41 on the approach to the Sheriff Hales Junction, and that is something they recommend is action. That's obviously a highway authority issue. The applicant has constructed the access in accordance with the approved plans, including realigning the estate boundary wall. If we can have the next couple of slides, please. So we're just looking there at the differentiation from the quarry plant site and the working areas of the quarry to the east with the lagoon, to the west with the lagoons on the western margin. Could we have the next one too? So just an air photo shot of the situation as it was about a year ago now. And can we move on again, please? So we're now seeing the quarry access itself, which has been put in, and the estate boundary wall has been reconstructed 2 metres behind that. And you can see the final slide in that sequence. We're just looking back up the Sheriff Hales Road now towards the quarry access, and you can see that yes, we can just about make out where the quarry access is indicated in the plan there, and you'll see that the estate boundary wall has been taken back from the highway margin to improve intervisibility. So it's not true to say that nothing has been done. A great deal has been done. The quarry has been operating for a couple of years successfully without us being notified of any issues with the access. However, there remains a concern from the parish council that the improvements to the junction, the B4379, have not been yet as of yet carried out. You'll see that it's a relatively acute angle. However, the road, the legal routing agreement precludes quarry lorries from travelling down that route to the village of Sheriff Hales. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the routing restriction is supported by a CCTV camera system, which is at the site access. And say, whilst we've had one incident of a report of a lorry going the wrong way as part of that, under representations on another application, so we haven't had anything to suggest that there is a significant issue with lorries not adhering to the routing. So in conclusion, therefore, Chair, before I pass on quickly to Gemma, the officer position is that the company has met all its obligations with regard to highway matters. There is a delay with regard to the improvement by the Sheriff Hales Junction. That is not the responsibility of the company. It's an issue to do with the timing of highway authority sort of internal work schedules, but that work is understand being expedited as Gemma will explain. The road safety audit confirms that there are no issues with the proposed increase in outputs, so therefore we conclude that it is acceptable in principle. Just a couple of matters. The application was the original application was subject to environmental impact assessment, and it is appropriate where there is a variation to actually reassess whether the variation itself is sufficiently significant, but it also requires an EIA in its own right. Now, officers have done this exercise in a kind of non-written sense and concluded that it does not meet the requirements. All the other elements of quarrying operation remain essentially the same. There are no new significant environmental impacts, and because the road safety audit concludes that the highway issue can be accepted and highway authority has not deferred from that position, we conclude as officers that there is no requirement for an EIA screening. It would not meet the requirements for a new EIA. However, as Miranda is reminding me, we will issue a screening opinion following any decision from this committee. Now, Chair, if I may just quickly pass on to Gemma in order to explain the current situation regarding the improvement works.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Gemma Lawley, Development Highways Manager. So as Graham's outlined, the previous application delivered a number of improvements, including a new junction improvement to the quarry, improved visibility for the B4379 Sheriff Hales Road junction. Previous to the previous application being considered, the A41 B4379 junction was identified as an accident cluster, so it was already within the Shropshire Council capital programme for improvement works. As a consequence of the previous application, we secured a Section 106 contribution of £50,000. That then funded a feasibility study that was produced in June 2020 that came up with a number of options. Based on the estimated cost, we were able to fund the option one, which basically seek to improve advanced direction signs on the approach to the junctions and road markings. The report also put forward a second option for vehicle activated signs on the approach, because you look at the accident data, the main issue is the right turn movement from the A41 turning into the Sheriff Hales Road. So it was to try and reduce vehicle speeds on the approach to the quarry and the junction itself. So as part of this application, the Highways Authority raises no objection to it on the basis of a further £25,000 Section 106 contribution would be secured. This we consider to be sufficient to cover the cost of option two, which would facilitate the vehicle activated signs on the approach and make it a more robust scheme. As Graham has outlined, the local parish council has raised kind of concerns and objections to this application on the basis that the works haven't been delivered to date, but they do form part of the current Section 106 capital programme. It is something that's been identified throughout Shropshire. We're looking to utilise all the Section 106 and put it in a forward programme. So the intention is that if this application is permitted today, then the scheme would go forward, including option one and option two.
Sorry, you coughed just when you said the last word to it.
Should you go forward option one, option two?
Yeah.
Do you want anything, Miranda, before I open it?
Just mention about the variations.
Yeah, okay, just clarify for members, the planning application for the eastern side of the quarry was subject to legal agreement, as I mentioned. This is a variation to that original application with a legal agreement, and therefore, in order to carry forward the intent of the previous legal agreement, we need a deed of variation as part of this. It wasn't perhaps explicitly referenced in the officer report, but the resolution, it's implicit that that legal agreement should also be carried forward to this one through a deed of variation.
Thank you, Graham. Right, now open up to committee. Who wishes to speak first, please? Councillor Marshall.
I thank you. Just a quick question on this, really. If we are to increase to 400,000 from 250,000, how will that affect the current working hours of 11.5 hours Monday to Friday and 5.5 hours on a Saturday?
It has no effect to the currently approved working hours. No other elements of this application, the originally approved quarry scheme, would be varied. However, there was a variation which was dealt with under officer delegated powers a few months back, which sought to increase the hours of working in a controlled way to allow 8 vehicles to leave and approach and leave the quarry outside of the normal hours of working per day in order to service, I mentioned before, the mortar plant at Bilston, which is a 24/7 operation. And so this proposal was to allow some additional working, but in terms of the main hours of working for the quarry, there would be absolutely no effect from this. Where there may be an implication is that obviously if you increase the output by 50%, then the actual time, or it's actually 33%, sorry, I beg your pardon, I think relative to the 250,000. But if you increase that, then obviously it has an implication with regard to the timing for the remainder of the resource within the quarry. I don't want to go down this road, if you'll pardon the expression, but they have discovered that there is more mineral at depth within the quarry. But the officer positionally made it very clear that if they want to access that, then that's a separate planning application. And it may well be that the committee is here considering an application on that basis in the future.
Okay,
Thank you. Councillor Butler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, like yourself, can probably remember that exceedingly cold, sleety December morning when we walked the original site. My God, was it cold. I actually passed the site not that long ago, actually, and I was actually impressed on how good it looks. And for the layman just whizzing by in the car, I don't think they'd actually realised there was a quarry there.
Yeah.
Now, the key importance to this, and I take on board what Gemma's said, and I think that's a really good caveat that on those proposals. We all know that the supply chain in the building industry is exceedingly tight at the moment. From this quarry, it is not travelling far, it is going to Bilston, the excess, and I think we need to do everything to support it. And I don't see there's any reason why we shouldn't on a material planning basis. And on that basis, Mr. Chairman, I move the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Lottery, please.
Yes, I passed the site and I must admit it does look very well set out. And if is it 3 years it's been running, and I am, however, concerned about the increase in tonnage. We're used to seeing traffic comments. Now, at item 6 of the traffic comments, says this proposal would be an intensification of an already hazardous situation. And then it goes on that it requires mitigation. I wonder whether this committee could say that it could have a slight increase in the tonnage to go to the 50% of 32-ton lorries rather than the 20-ton lorries, say perhaps 275 tonnage a year, and that any other increase would be subject to a condition to the highways work actually being done. I don't think as a committee we should be saying, yes, let's have it done, and then waiting what could be 1 or 2 years till this urgent road safety work needs doing. So as such at the moment, the proposal I would support. However, I would support if we had some sort of conditions as to the tonnage increase, because 275 really would just be that 50% increase in the lorries, which they said they're doing anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall, please.
Yes, sorry. I don't know whether the proposer is happy to accept that additional condition. Either way, I'm happy to second the proposal to accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Can I come back down, legal? Yeah, you wait as a condition.
You need to see if the proposal would accept it. If not, then need to vote on the amendment. But you need the officers to comment on that first.
Right. Anybody else wishing to speak? Good.
Just to say, my gut feeling is if we amend the proposal to that, we'll be sitting here again in 6 or 12 months to have it put up again. And I think we'll be going around in circles. I think would a solution for this to put a time for when the road improvements have got to be installed by?
Okay. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I'll listen to what Councillor Butler said, and I absolutely agree with him. It is important that we support the building industry, and that is done with minerals throughout the county. The main concern that I had, which Graham French has answered for me, was the working times of the plant. The A41 itself, I know that area extremely well. It is 24/7 lorries coming from Market Drayton with the fresh and chilled produce. We have it from the Irish ferries coming over. So it's a well-traversed road during the night times as well. So the 8 extra vehicles out of hours doesn't cause me any problems whatsoever.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, can I just come back on Councillor Lumley's suggestion, if I may, please? Just to clarify that the condition requires, which we are recommending, requires that there shall be no increase above 325,000 tonnes per annum until the level of 32 tonners in the company's fleet exceeds 50%. Now, they're nearly approaching that. The benefits of that is that the actual number of individual lorries using the access will go down significantly relative to the 20 tonners that they have sort of been phasing out on this. But I just wanted to caution, if I may, in terms of the suggestion that the increase should not fully implement until the highway works are improved, are undertaken. And just to remind us that the company has met its obligations, it's paid its money, it's agreed to pay another 25,000 to facilitate the flashing and warning signs, so that option 2 of the Highway Authority's options can also be implemented. But what we don't have control, what the applicant has no reasonable control over, is the timing of the junction improvement works. That's a matter purely for the Highway Authority as the sort of relevant authority, and Gemma has confirmed that it is programmed in for the current financial year. So I think all we can say is that the works are likely to be undertaken soon, that the delay has perhaps been regrettable and it's caused concern for the parish council, but that we have flashing speed signs which are capable of being implemented immediately. We also have clear highway conclusion that even without those, the situation with the junction will be safe with the increased output proposed. So I think basically I would encourage members to look at the original resolution as it stands. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Lumley's amendment, if you like, is made up of 2 parts. One is the lower tonnage, but secondly, the timescale being put on the highways works being carried out. I heard what Graham had to say on that point just then. I mean, I wouldn't support a reduction in the tonnage from that that's in the application, but I do believe that we do need to have some firm commitment as to when the highways work will be completed by.
Okay. I believe we've been told by Gemma, hopefully the next 12 months. Do you want to come back on that, Gemma?
Just to sort of clarify the situation in terms of the section 106 at the moment, we work on a 3-year programme anyway. That feasibility study is being done, the design can go forward. At the moment, we're recognising that the monies are returned within 5 years. I think the previous ones were along 12 months, 2 years. So that would, but I am mindful of the fact that there are a number of Section 106 projects that are going through the system right across Shropshire really, but this one has been identified as a priority because, as I previously stated, it was identified as a accident cluster site, so it was already within the programme to be looked at anyway. If it gives members any reassurance, I've looked at the accident records in terms of there does continue to be slight accidents at the Sheriff Hales Road junction itself, but in terms of the quarry movements, they are restricted to the right turn movement in, left turn out, so they're not actually passing through this junction and using the Sheriff Hales roads, but they have identified that it is sort of desirable to try and reduce vehicle speeds on the approach and reduce those accidents. So, which is why, as a highway authority, we've deemed that it's the application before us is acceptable, and we've not raised any objection to them.
Thank you. Good. Now, can I come back to your proposal, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I leave the proposal as is. I don't believe any extra movement from the quarry will have anything to do with the future accidents at that junction. So I just move the officer's recommendation as stated, Chair.
Thank you.
I
Second. You second that. Okay, so we have a proposal and a second for the officer's recommendation. I will ask Miranda to take the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll call your names out if you can please indicate for, against, or abstain. We haven't got Councillor Boddington, have we?
No.
No, okay, just checking. Right. Councillor Bagnall. For. Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Hignett.
For.
Councillor Luff. For. Councillor Lumby.
Against?
Councillor Marshall.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
Abstain.
Councillor Tyndall.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
That's 7 for, Chair, 1 against and 1 abstention.
That's carried, thank you. But we now move on to the next application to Shipley, the resource. So Dave, please.
So, Chair, we're just getting to the end of the PowerPoint. If you just give us patience, there's a lot of slides. We haven't changed the order of them, so. Thank you, Chair. We'll just move to the slide. So this is a quarry site that, as members will remember, we visited it about 18 months ago. It is located in the east side of the county, right near the boundary with Staffordshire and near the Staffordshire village of Pattingham. And the permission to extract 3.5 million tonnes of sand and gravel at the site was granted in May 2019. Preparatory works commenced in August 2020, and the site is nearly ready to commence mineral production. There have been a few conditions that have been necessary to discharge along the way, nearly ready. So a local community liaison group was convened, which Councillor Marshall chairs, and Councillor Lynch, the other local member, also attends, and representatives from 2 parishes, the local community, planning and highways. So the applicant JP Holdings applying to vary the approved access arrangements for the quarry. Proposal is to remove a right turn lane, if we can have the next plan, there we go, which is shown in currently approved access drawing. Now, this is the proposed drawing. The currently approved drawing, I haven't got it here, but it shows a right turn lane, which is effectively an island in the middle, a linear island in the middle of the carriageway, and it was put in order to facilitate the turning of HGVs right from the Staffordshire direction into the quarry junction. Now, the proposal is not to put that right turn lane in, but instead to rely on the free flow of traffic from the current T-junction arrangements. We can just move on a bit. I have a picture of the quarry. There we are. So we see that's the existing T-junction. And in justification for this, the applicant has prepared a road safety audit, which indicates, concludes that not only would the removal of the right turn lane be safe, but it would actually represent an improvement over the currently approved scheme, because of the concern that as lorries are stacked on the right turn lane, waiting to turn right, they may come into conflict with traffic seeking to overtake on what is a long straight of highway. By removing the right turn lane, we remove, or the applicant removes, that risk factor, and so the conclusion that actually it's a better situation. So we haven't had any comments from the Clovelly Parish Council, in whose area the access is located, and Warfield and Rudge, which are the neighbouring parish, but not specifically in response to this application, but both sit on the liaison committee, and we've both had comments from them in connection with an earlier iteration of this application, which was proposed as a non-material amendment, which the planning authority determined was not non-material, and therefore had to be considered as a material amendment, and hence the current application. So we know that both parishes have opposition to the current proposals, but it isn't, is my understanding, based on the removal of the right turn lane and the assumption that that is a safer option. It is instead based on concerns that, as with the Woodcote Wood site previously, elements required under legal agreement linked to the original planning consent have not been fully discharged. So one of the proposals, if I can just reverse the slide back to the OS map, please, Tim. So one of the proposals is to extend the 50-mile-an-hour limit from the Staffordshire boundary, which is only, you see where the pub sign is. Well, the Staffordshire boundary is just in the vicinity of that, or it's just to the west of that, in fact. And the proposal is to extend that 50-mile-an-hour limit all the way across to Shipley, which is the village which you see to the east of the blue area, to the west of the blue area there. And one of the concerns is that that has not yet taken place, and so we're left with quite a fast stretch of carriageway. The other element is that £35,000 was secured under the legal agreement to secure additional signage along the A454 frontage in the vicinity of the site access. And that money has not yet been spent on the signage. Now it's a very similar situation to the Woodcote one, and again I will, if I may, Chair, invite Gemma to just update the committee on the situation with that. My understanding is that the highway works specified in the legal agreement are prioritised for the current sort of financial spend season for the highway budgets. So anyway, in terms of other elements, there are no other changes that this scheme would result in. The area, the rate of extraction, the volume of mineral, the nature of plant processes within the site, the landscaping, everything would remain unaffected by this. So the principal issue really is whether the right turn lane is intrinsically safe, which the road safety audit says that it is, and Gemma will doubtless be able to corroborate that, and also whether there is a concern that the conclusions for that must await the implementation of the speed limit and the additional signage on the highway. So just a couple of minor points of order, if I may, before passing on quickly to Gemma. As with the Woodcote site, this is an application which is also subject to a legal agreement, and hence there is a requirement to ensure that as this is a variation, which could supersede the original and become the principal operating consent for the site, that the intent of the legal agreement is carried forward through means of a deed of variation. Now, that hasn't been expressly stated in the officer report, but that was the intention. That's implicit that any recommendation would need to be accompanied by a deed of variation. The other element, which again, as with the Woodcote site, is that the original application was accompanied by an EIA, and it's also, because this is a variation to an EIA application, we also need to test this to determine whether it meets the criteria for EIA in its own right. Now, again, officers have done this exercise but have not formally issued a screening opinion, but intend to do so prior to any decision by this committee. But our conclusion is that because there are no other changes, as with the Woodcote site, there are no additional environmental implications, and the only implication which relates to highways is addressed through means of the legal agreements and demonstrated through the road safety audit. So again, we conclude that there is no requirement for an updated EIA to accompany this application. So, Chair, if I may just quickly pass to Gemma to update members on the highway position.
Thank you, Chair. So as Graham's outlined, then from a highways perspective, we're not raising any objections to the current application, variation of the condition. In terms of the access, we consider that it's acceptable for the intended use in terms of visibility. In terms of the right turn lane, then we're supportive of a simple T junction. It's been subject to a road safety audit that didn't raise any concerns. In terms of the section 106 contribution that we previously secured, I'm able to provide a little bit more certainty in terms of the delivery of these works. That our engineering consultants, WSP, have been commissioned to look at that, and it's expected that the initial design will be completed by the end of July and the detailed design at the end of September at the very latest, with a view to it works being completed this financial year.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on it? Right. Okay, open to committee, please.
We've got the chair.
Oh, you're speaking, sorry. Right, Councillor Richard Cotton, please, for Clamley Parish Councillor. You press the right hand button on the microphone. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Richard Cotton, Clavely Parish Council Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. Clavely Parish Council wishes to object to this planning application variation, as it is non-compliant with condition 17, as it restricts the free flow of traffic. However, the approved planning permission has no detrimental effect on the free flow or safety of traffic. The junction is in full accordance with DMRB design standards for right turning traffic. Shropshire Council Highways Consultants, WSP, have no objection, along with the inclusion of a new signage, overtaking restrictions and reduced speed limit. You can see the source if you look on the sheet I provided with you. Planning application 2018 transport assessment, David Tucker Associates, on behalf of JPE. I quote, traffic turning right is approaching an uphill gradient, and a simple right turn junction would represent a potential hazard to inattentive drivers following quarry vehicles. It is therefore proposed to provide a right turn harbourage, as it is the safest option and will minimise delay to other drivers. Watt McDonald Road Safety Audit for JPE concludes right turn lane is safe, no more dangerous than a simple right turn, but does allow free flow of traffic and recommends additional signage, overtaking restrictions and speed reduction. This section of the A454, either side of the site entrance, is a known accident black spot. 9,000 vehicle movements per day, or roughly one every 6 seconds during site operating hours. Staffordshire, 20 incidents, 13 slight, 6 serious, 1 fatal. 9 were simple right turn manoeuvres, which included the fatality. Shropshire has 5 slight and 5 serious. Councillors, you would normally go with officer recommendation. However, today you have 2 officer recommendations. Your simple choice is which is the safest between the already granted planning permission, which includes a road safety audit accepted as safe by 3 separate consultants, including a comprehensive 18-page transport assessment, and recommendations for a reduced speed limit, overtaking restrictions and additional signage, as suggested by this committee, all included in the section 284 agreement, yet no longer applying in the variation, or a variation with a road safety audit which has used no additional information or suggested additional safety measures other than the opinion of 2 blokes sitting on the side of the road for 2 hours, requiring no change to the junction, which is non-compliant with condition 17, as it will restrict free flow of traffic. There's 70 lorries a day. That's roughly 1 every 10 minutes if you evenly space it out. Try to cross oncoming traffic, which in a 10-minute period would be 10 oncoming or 10 following, and is acceptable in principle is only acceptable in principle by the Highway Authority. Clavely Parish Council requests you refuse this variation on safety and free flow of traffic grounds and non-compliance with condition 17.
23 minutes, Angela, thank you. Okay,
That's it.
thank you very much. Thank you.
If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, any
take them.
questions, please? No, you're okay. Thank you. Councillor Eileen Aldridge, Vice Chair, Brookfield Parish Council, please.
It's Elaine, actually.
Sorry, Elaine. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Worfield and Ridge Parish Council have always had the impact of 96 lorry movements per day on the A454 and the safety issues therein at the forefront of their responses to this application. The council recognised that due to the limited visibility from the site entrance, caution must be exercised when large slow-moving vehicles are entering or exiting onto a national speed limited A road without suitable traffic control. We have been relying on the expertise of the Highways Department and the 3 road safety audits that have taken place to highlight potential safety issues. However, the latest road safety audit, version 3, took place at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not we feel a realistic time to assess road traffic volumes. The A454 is particularly busy from 7 until 9:30 in the morning with the usual commuters and school traffic, precisely the time that lorries will be entering and exiting the quarry to fill their loads and then travel to their customers. Therefore, we do not have total confidence in the audit's findings and the fact that this will inform this committee of the inherent safety issues. One of our primary concerns is that traffic travelling at 60 miles an hour from Wolverhampton towards the quarry might not see the junction until they are very close upon it, as there is a rise in the topography on approach. If traffic is still allowed to overtake on the approach to the entrance, this could cause problems. On the current proposal, there is no indication of road markings to be employed, such as double, single, solid white lining, as described in Chapter 5 of the Traffic Signs Manual. We consider road marking should be an integral component of the safety strategy to this addition to the already busy A road. The proposed new signage, those that state new road layout ahead, do not, we feel, give the general public an accurate idea that slow-moving traffic will be ahead and think that more consideration should be given as to the information on the roadside. The original planning decision and the discussion at this planning committee determined that a change in speed limit from 60 to 50 would be adopted before operations began at the quarry. The parish council's priorities for the safety of the community once the lorry movements begin. The 3 speed cameras along the stretch of the A454 leading to the quarry have not been operational for some years and do not offer any deterrent. In conclusion, Worfield and Ridge Parish Council do not consider the current proposal to address the safety issues as sufficiently rigorous. Traffic calming measures such as road markings and accurate signage must be utilised to ensure safety at this junction for all road users. The promised speed reduction must also be implemented shortly before quarrying can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? No, thank you very much, Andy. Right, we've got a statement from the local member, which is Elliot Lynch, and I'll ask Miranda to read it out, please.
Thank you, Chair. He writes, Councillors, I regret that I can't speak in person to you today, but my view on the application before you is as follows. Living in Cleverley and commuting to Wolverhampton on the A454 for many years has meant that the development of the Shipley Quarry has been something that has been present in my mind long before I represented Cleverley at Shropshire Council. I welcome that the works are proceeding at the site, and I am happy to note that the Community Liaison Committee has met on several occasions and the atmosphere was collegiate and based on good faith. I have visited the quarry and was impressed by the standard of the works being carried out and the diligence of the plans to restore the environment post-works in the years to come. For the application being discussed today, there are 2 choices. The first is to remain as is with the plans as were accepted in the original application, which specifies a right turn harbourage. The second is to accept the proposal today, which says this is unnecessary. It is my strongly held view, based on an experience that the A454 is dangerous along that stretch due to a number of factors, especially during commuting hours. I am glad to see that this has been noted in previous reports, and I am sure that members will be familiar with the section. A harbourage will more freely allow the continuation of traffic on a busy and frenetic road, which will aid in the mitigation of risk, as has previously been noted. I will conclude with a plea that you do not decide lightly on this application, councillors. Thank you in advance for your considered deliberations.
Thank you, Miranda. Right, we now have Adam Collins, please, or the agent. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I think the matter before you is important to understand what is proposed and what is not proposed. In effect, this is a very simple change. It is to change the approved access to a T-junction and not to undertake the right turn lane. One of the considerations on the free flow of traffic is this is actually not a position along most of the A454. Most of the turning is, without right turn lanes. One of the debates during the original application was actually in relation to whether the free flow of traffic was a road safety hazard or not. One of the issues with having the free flow of traffic and having Harbourage in the centre of the A454 is obviously that can encourage cars to undertake, overtake, as well as potentially increased speeds. The junction has been assessed in terms of the T-junction as being safe. And one of the conclusions from the RSA is set out in the committee report was that the issue that was identified by the previous RSA in relation to harbourage of vehicles in the middle of the road would be alleviated and mitigated by not implementing the Ghost Island as originally consented. In relation to the wider issues on highways, the applicant has fully complied with all its commitments in the Section 106. It has provided its funding to fund the speed limit reduction and wider improvements to the highway. I think it is worth pointing out that these matters do reside with the Highways Authority, and indeed the operator remains absolutely committed to supporting those issues in relation to that. And indeed, I trust from what's been said today that those improvements will be implemented as soon as practicable. In terms of the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit reduction, that was offered or made a Section 106 agreement requirement as part of a community benefit, because actually along the A454, along much of the route to Bridge North, there are speed limit reductions going through villages and hamlets. Obviously that will benefit Shipley as well in terms of the speed limit reduction, but there is nothing in these proposals which change any of those legal agreements. We want the changes to the A454 to be undertaken as quickly as possible, but that is a Highways Authority matter. In terms of the matter before this committee, is purely considering the access change and whether it is safe or not, and the findings of the RSA are fully agree that this would be a safe junction and indeed would mitigate some of the previous concerns raised around free flow of traffic.
Thank you. Are there any questions about it, please? No, thank you very much. Right, we're now open to committee. Mr. Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. There appears from the two applications that we've been looking at this afternoon an uncomfortable pattern emerging of legal agreements being made when applications are considered in the first instance, and then moves to not comply with some of the road traffic improvements that have been agreed in those legal agreements. And there's also another pattern, and that is that ancillary work to be undertaken by our own highways department is just not happening in a reasonable time frame. And so these two things together make this particular case uncomfortable to me, and I won't be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we're going down history lane because we visited this site, I remember well. I was pleased to report it was a nice sunny day. I know this road very well. I used to live in Wolverhampton and now live in Shropshire. Travels it well. Before I come to any conclusions, could I ask Gemma a question, Chair?
Yes, please.
Could you reiterate to us what road markings are going to be put on there, and what road marking to illustrate no overtaking or speed reduction will be put on the road?
Thank you, Chair. Just bear with me a second while I get the details, if that's okay.
Could you put the slide of the road on the road?
It's quite difficult to
It's
tell.
difficult to understand what's the problem.
Yeah.
Which one? The next one was actually shows you 12, that's right.
That's what's there at the moment, I presume. So there's nothing shown there not to overtake, is there? Although it's illegal to overtake while approaching a jump.
A year old picture.
Right, yes, yeah. Okay, so in terms of the actual scope of the works, it will be subject to site surveys and ATC data and speeds and preload design and consultation with both parish councils. I think the expectation is that as you look along the route between the quarry access and the roundabout, there are clusters of accidents at the junctions, so any signing will seek to address that, and also, as it's been stated, to kind of reduce the potential for overtaking movements, particularly around the junction itself. But each, when we're implementing double solid white lines, it does have to meet the requirements and forward visibility, so it would be subject to that. We see from the notes that in principle West Mercia Police have supported the proposed reduction in the speed limit to 250, but that is subject to consultation with the neighbouring authority, and also as ever West Mercia Police are requesting that it's self-enforcing, so there will be a requirement for additional signing and notating, but at this stage I can't confirm with certainty the scope of the works, but it will be done in consultation with the both parish councils and local members.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a difficult one because when somebody says it will go out to consultation with the police and parish councils and everything else, it's long grass comes to mind. Because and I know it's a process we have to follow, but we can't expect anything to happen quickly. Knowing that road as well as I do, the biggest problem I believe, and in relation to the accidents, is speed. Now, I'm in mixed minds here, and I'll wait to listen to the debate, because if you're on Ghost Island, you take the lorry out of the moving traffic, the traffic will still go fast. But if the lorry doesn't have a Ghost Island and has to wait there for the cars to actually pass before it can turn, you've slowed the traffic right down. So, which would be safest? And I think that is the question before us today. And I'm minded to go with the application, because slowing the traffic down, I can remember being a boy racer when I was 17 or 18 and coming out of the congestion of Wolverhampton, and then you're on this Bridge North Road and the straight roads and you can put your foot down. Why on earth do they put speed cameras there? Speed to me is the biggest issue, and I think getting rid of the Ghost Island will actually slow the traffic down.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Egan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, one of the points I was going to make was about signage, which Councillor Butler has already brought up. I think more road signage would certainly go a long way towards helping that junction safer. And I'm not saying whether I'm voting one way or the other at the moment, but I'm just trying to look at options when a big improvement or suggested improvement is to be made on a road junction like this. I would, as Councillor Butler said, like to see how much signage is in place already, signage such as no overtaking, lorries turning ahead, busy junction, that sort of thing, which I think may help, including some of the white lining on the road perhaps. I do think a speed restriction might help a little bit, although dropping it down to 50, I'm not sure it's going to slow down certain motorists. I won't say what range they fall into, but I think we all know who they are. I would like to know what officers the expected life of the quarry, and I asked that. I don't think it was in the report, but it would be interesting to know if this is going to be an improvement that is going to need to last for many years. But I also do take the point that Councillor Butler was brought up again about if you've got a lorry parked and waiting to turn right, is it safer for the traffic to be stopped behind that lorry, or is it safer for it to be continuing on at so-called normal speed? So I'm still considering this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lobby, please.
I live on a restricted road, and my childminder was in the traffic waiting to turn right with their indicator on. The next vehicle comes behind who hasn't got an indicator on. So the third vehicle says, "Oh, I'll overtake them all," just as my childminder was turning right. That could happen here. I certainly don't think I'll be supporting this. It's interesting how we were going to have 50-mile-an-hour signs and it's not been done. I actually believe that there has to be an element of self-enforcing regarding the 50-mile-an-hour and the chicanery created by the right turn may or should slow them down. And if you're a certain driver who likes going fast, and you've got a lorry there and you're doing 60, you might overtake it. Whereas if you've got an available left lane, at least you can safely pass it. So I'm sorry, but I won't be supporting. Oh, one more thing. 3 years ago, there were surveys done on this where they had the option of having that junction, and they chose not to. And also the officers went with the right-hand turn. I personally can't see any reason why we should change away from that, so I doubt I'll be supporting.
Thank you. Can you come back, Jim, and tell us what sign is there? What is it as it is? Can you come back and tell us what signage there is already? Or?
I can't at this time, to be, honest. All I can say is that as part of the works, there will be a full survey of existing signage that will look at the routes. I have found some wording within the Section 106 agreements, which basically is the highway safety works. So it's to be carried out in accordance with the coloured plan, which is between the site entrance and the roundabout itself. And it states that the works will be not limited to improving curbing, signage, safety markings, additional birds cutting, vehicle activated signs, warning signs, and or a speed camera. So that's the scope of the commission to our consultants WSP, and say it will be done in consultation with the local parish, who I'm aware has already expressed concerns with regard to not only this route but other routes along.
Thank you. Come back, Graham, with the life expectancy of the quarry, please.
Yes, Chair, the quarry is 3.6 million, 3.5 million tonnes, sorry, over an estimated lifespan of 14 years, with restoration taking another 18 months. Can I very quickly interject on the second point that was made regarding essentially comparison, whether it's a beauty contest, option A and option B, the ghost turn lane or not the ghost turn lane. Can I just remind members that the application before them is not to implement the right turn lane. It isn't a case of an either or at this stage in the context of this application. It can be either approved or refused. If there is a recommendation to refuse, then it has to be based on valid highway reasons. In this case, yes, we've heard of earlier highway conclusions that Councillor Cotham mentioned regarding the original road safety audit. That road safety audit has been superseded now by an audit which is specific to the current application. That concludes that the T-junction, simple T-junction is safe. The Highway Authority has accepted that, and in its Section 278 legal agreement, it has accepted the amended plans. So if members do not accept it, then they would need to demonstrate corresponding highway evidence, which could be sustained on potentially on appeal. Now, that's the question that I asked. It isn't an either or, is this particular layout now being proposed safe? And the advice from the Highway Authority and from the independent road safety audits that the applicant has commissioned is yes, it is. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Jeremy, come back yet?
Just one point to make really is the fact that obviously the audits, we have different stages of the road safety audit, and this is a stage 3 safety audit. So whilst when we look at these proposals, normally they haven't actually been put into place, so they make an assessment based on kind of best judgment. In this particular case, they've been able to actually go out to site and have a look at how the junction forms. I think they undertake a daytime visit and also a nighttime audit as well as part of a road stage 3 road safety audit. And as we've kind of outlined, it's quite unusual really, but there are no kind of observations or comments that are made within the safety audit that have expressed any kind of concerns about how that junction is operating at this time.
Thanks, Butler.
Do you want to take Hilary first, Chair?
Hilary, step it up, please.
So I can hear the debate.
Thank you. Just if we could go back on the slides, can we just see if they leave the junction as it is without the ghost island, is there a risk that traffic, instead of waiting behind the lorries, will actually just overtake on the left hand side? I know people often just overtake on the left. Is there a way of us seeing whether that's going to happen? I mean, are people just going to overtake the lorry on the left? Yes, where that. Are they just going to overtake on the left anyway? If we don't put it in the ghost island, surely it'd be safer with the ghost island rather than traffic instead of waiting behind the lorry. Do you know what I'm saying?
So like behind the verge, you go around.
Yeah, just go up on the verge. Yeah. I know that happens where I turn into my home. People overtake me on the left when I'm waiting to turn right. And I just think that would be risky there. There is room, especially, isn't there, for them to do that. So I think I wouldn't, that would be my concern.
Okay, Jeremy, do you want to come back there?
I was going to say, I think in a lot of these cases, there's no accounting for kind of like driver behaviour, and that's what normally results in a collision, really, to be honest. There's always going to be a risk that vehicles will go round on the verge and try and sort of bypass it. I think in terms of the right turn lane, then when we're looking at whether a right turn lane is justified, we look at the number of vehicle movements that are likely to make that turn, and whether actually in terms of, we look at it from a safety perspective, but we'd also look at it from a capacity perspective as well, that is there a number of right turn movements that will then result in kind of stacking of vehicles that will cause like delay to the network itself. And in this particular case, we're satisfied that there won't be. We had a very similar sort of kind of discussion when it came to Woodcock, that originally they were looking at a right turn lane, and we looked at the safety elements of it and came to the conclusion that in that particular case then a single T junction was acceptable in terms of the number of movements that are made. I think ultimately you can never account for driver behaviour, and there will always be those vehicles that sort of try and bypass it and go around. But from a technical perspective, we're satisfied that there's sufficient forward visibility on the approaches, and that vehicles should be able to reduce their speeds accordingly to respond to any vehicles that are turning in and out of the junction.
Captain Tidwell, please, just come in.
Yes, I'll be very quick. Is the right-hand lane the same as is referred to as the ghost lane? And it's not physically barriered, it's just paint on the road. Mm-hmm. Yes. And that was what they were originally given consent to do, or required to do. And now, subject, as I understand, to these green bits on the other side, that the junction is now proposed.
It's a normal T junction.
Yes, remains like that, but with these amendments shown in green on that side, which was very difficult to see from here. That one, yes. Have I got this completely correct?
Yeah, if I could, there is a slight sort of engineering difference between a junction involving a ghost island and a simple T junction. That is that the road needs to widen a bit in order to accommodate the width of the ghost island. So there would need to be land take on one or either side and a slight realignment of the carriageway. So obviously there are additional engineering complications with the original proposal involving the sort of highway verge land, which is not involved in the T junction.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons, please.
Yeah, just on the, when we heard from Clavely Parish Council, we were given some numbers with regards to accidents that had occurred, I'm assuming, at this junction. It may be over a wider area of the A454, I'm not sure. And I don't know over what period of time, whether that's in a year or whether it's over 10 years or what it may be. But obviously, there is the statement there that 9 of these accidents were simple right turn manoeuvres, which I'm assuming were at this particular spot, including a fatality. And that's with the road as it currently is, without the quarry traffic. So we must take account, I think, of the changes that the development of this quarry will bring to that road.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Robert? Because I didn't know you finished.
Yes, sorry, yes, I would just like to say that Graham mentioned that it wasn't an either or, we can't choose which one we prefer. It is simply, are we going to approve this application does away with the ghost lane? Have I got that correct? Yeah. In which case, I propose that the officer's recommendation is approved to accept this.
Go back there.
Yeah, if I can just clarify the accident statistics, they don't purely relate to this minor junction. They relate to the wider stretch of the A454, and some of it, I believe, relates to turns. For instance, there's a nursery site with a garden land with an agricultural campus associated with it. I think some of the turnings related to that, some of the issues related to that, and I think there may have been others related to the Shipley side further on. So it's not by any means specific to this junction, my understanding.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Going on Graham's point, to the best of my knowledge, this is a relatively new junction, specifically built for the quarry, so it's hardly being used. And I would imagine that a lot of the statistics are at the crossroads of the Fox, a bit further down the road, because there's often accidents there. I can't help feeling that this is another occasion where we're putting the cart before the horse, in the fact we don't know what the road design is going to be like, and we don't know what traffic calming is going to be put in until we've got the consultation. And in an ideal world, it would be nice to have that information. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work like that. And we have an application in front of us, which we have to determine. Yeah, and the applicant has that right, that we have to determine the application. Now, as I said before, I think by leaving the junction as a T junction will slow the traffic down, and that is the biggest cause of accidents on that road, to the best of my knowledge. And therefore I will support Councillor Tinter's proposals. Thank you.
Do we know how long it's going to take to implement all these this design and everything else before I take the vote?
Let me just clarify that. Yeah, okay. So we did try and accelerate the design process, but the latest update from our consultants is that they expect the prelim design to be completed by the end of July, consultation before the end of August, and the detailed design at the latest at the end of September. So with a view to it being put in the programme only completed this financial year, so before the end of March, but so it's been identified as a priority project. And so yeah, the aim is really that we would at least have a prelim design before the end of July.
Okay, thank you. Right, we have a proposal on the table by Councillor Tindall, seconded by Councillor Butler. And then to take the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bagnall.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Hignett.
For.
Councillor Luff. For councillor Lambie.
Against.
Councillor Marsh was not in the room, is he? Councillor Parsons.
Against.
Councillor Tyndall.
For.
I have 4 in favour and 3 against, Chair, so that is carried.
We haven't taken my vote, I'm for.
Chairman, on that happy note.
So that's carried. You want to compliment your councillor Tindall? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Another 5
And I will retrieve Richard.
Thank you.
Over there.
This one, where he pointed out it's actually quite difficult to see.
Well, still on live stream, everybody, just microwave and off, and if you want to go quick off the break, in 5 minutes, thank you.
Yeah, number 11. So I think now they're back.
Really, the start of
Yeah. So I think they're on the highway.
Item number 6 is the builders quarry, builders legislation. Builders agent.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an application which members will recall came before them at the meeting, I think it was the 8th of February, when the determination of the application was deferred, primarily due to concerns or questions raised about the access to the site, and in particular the junction with the B4380, which is the access into the site. That's the application site. So you can see it's a large site extending, I think, to about 19.6 hectares in total. The access is in the bottom left part of that diagram that's displayed before you, with the access driveway moving in a kind of northeasterly direction, serving the main body of the site, which is obviously in the western part of that diagram. The site, as members may well be aware, is quite a steeply sloping site. It slopes upwards from south to north, and it's intended that the proposed development will take place, or the proposed caravans, I'll come on to the numbers, etc. in a moment, will be sited primarily in the northern area of the site, with the touring caravans kind of more towards the middle, and a landscaping area to the southern area of the site. The proposal is for 120 static lodges / caravans, all of which would need to be and would meet the definition of caravan within the Caravan Sites Act. As I said, they would be located primarily in the northern area of the site, so this area here, and the proposal also includes 35 touring caravan pitches and alterations and improvements to the access road. There is reference within the application to some other development, potential development, including a reception building and a parking area, pulling area, but that at this stage is indicative and doesn't form part of the current application, so there are no details of that, and that would in itself require a further planning application. The proposal also includes some extensive landscaping of the site to help mitigate the development that's taking place. The site currently contains a significant number of mature trees, and the intention is to keep the majority of those mature trees and keep as many as possible, and to supplement the retention of those trees with additional landscaping. And the proposal also includes some alterations to the access, the main access into the site, which will be off the B4380. There would be a secondary access. Sorry, if I just come back to. There would be a secondary access off the site, from the site onto the A4169, which is to the east of the site. But the intention is that would be only used in emergency circumstances. The proposal. So you'll see that I'm just going to run through these slides relatively quickly. That's just the part of the landscaping mitigation plan, showing some of the types of planting that is proposed. As I say, that's primarily going to be around the southern part of the site. and there are plans here which show that the roadways will roughly follow the kind of the contour lines throughout the site. That's intended to show that the site, as I've mentioned previously, slopes significantly from south to north. So the roadways would kind of, as I say, follow the contour sign, so that the roadways themselves would run at would be fairly level in terms of the internal roadways. Doesn't particularly, but that again is showing the levels through the site sections through the site. So you'll see that you can see from that there is a very significant slope throughout the site. Since the last application, the applicants have submitted some further information in terms of their proposal to widen the access that would serve the development, and also to they've provided some additional details about the gradient of the access, because that was cited as one of the concerns of members, the gradient to the access and its suitability for use by in particular the touring caravan elements of the proposal, and that was also an issue around vehicle movements at the mouth of the entrance off the highway. So the applicants have sought to mitigate that and have provided further details regarding those matters, which are referred to and have been considered in the update report. You have before you in your pack of reports both the update report and the original report that came before you back in February. So that I'm just running through the slides. That shows the access road. There's the bank to the north there would be graded and planted. The access road is in grey on that plan. It provides some passing places along the way. It's generally 4 to 4.5 metres in width, but it does, as I say, contain a number of passing places. That's a slide showing the entrance to the site as it currently exists. And these are slides just showing the highway from the point of access. I think that's the secondary access that's proposed, would be the emergency access onto the highway. So just again, that's the site as it currently stands. It's agricultural land. It's used for grazing, and as I say, you'll see from that plan that the mature trees that are referred to are primarily in the southern part of the site, where the additional landscaping would take place. Again, just showing this is showing the slope on the site. I'm not going to say too much about this. I mean, obviously there will be some landscape impact in terms of the scale of development proposed, but as I say, the proposed landscaping is intended to mitigate that impact to what is considered to be an acceptable degree. So looking down from the northern part of the site, you'll see this again. You'll see the slope looking towards Buildworths in that instance. I draw members' attention to the late representation sheet. There are a number of representations on there, both from the agent for the application, and also I think there's a representation from a neighbour who has suggested that the proposed widening of the access encroaches onto his land. I think the photographs have they been included in the pack that's been sent to you. The photographs are the agent's response to the claim from the neighbour that his land is involved in the development. The photographs that I'm showing you at present are the post and wire fence is the boundary, so the axis, the proposed changes to the axis are intended, are not shown as encroaching onto the neighbour's land. The land again for the neighbour is marked by the post and wire fence on the right hand side. Just to say, in terms of the issue around the ownership, obviously, were the neighbour to be able to prove that the proposed changes to the access relied on the use of some of his land and he wasn't prepared to allow that to happen, then of course the development couldn't happen in accordance with the approved plans, so it would be prevented from happening unless the applicant subsequently came back looking for amendments to the proposal. Just in terms of housekeeping, I think if I refer members' attention to the update report, you'll see the comments from our Developing the Highways team about the proposed changes, and they've raised no objection, as indeed they didn't do to the original proposal. Obviously, the suggestions put forward by the applicants about the widening of the access and the confirmation about the gradients of the access have kind of made the proposal better in that regard. But so the situation is currently that we don't have an objection from the Developing Highways team. The update report again sets out just a bit the main considerations in respect of the proposed development. Obviously, the policy considerations, the siting and design of the proposal, impact on visual amenity, impact on heritage assets, more of which I'll say in a second or two. Clearly, highway safety and transport, ecology and drainage have all been considered, as has residential amenity and potential contamination of the site. There have been further representations received since the application was deferred. Those again are set out in the update report before you. But sorry, I was just losing my way in terms of the paperwork then. I'm not sure at 4.1.2 of the update report, the conditions that are set out by the Developing Highways team, it's no objection subject to a number, I think 3 conditions set out there. I don't know that they've been included as worded there in the list of conditions at the end of the report. So I would just like if members did resolve to grant planning permission today, I would like to include those conditions if they've not been included or they need amending, or there are other conditions that need amending at the end of the report in relation to highway matters. Lastly, the original report, within the main body of the report, set out that the applicants had submitted a report in terms of the impact on the historic environment, and their report had concluded that there was a neutral impact on historic assets and the historic environment, and our conservation team acknowledged and accepted that the report that was done was reasonable, and that the conclusion reached that the impact was a neutral impact. So I just wanted to draw members' attention to the end of the report, because the conclusion of the original report seemed to suggest in the conclusion that there was a negative impact on heritage matters on heritage grounds. But in the planning balance, it was overcome by the benefits to be derived. Obviously, that's not the case. The impact isn't a negative impact. It's a neutral impact, and therefore it's not something to be weighed in the planning balance, because it's a negative. It's a neutral, sorry, rather than a negative. So, subject to that clarification, I don't intend to say anything further. Obviously, happy to answer questions and listen to the speakers.
Okay.
I've just got a question. I see that there's a new paragraph 654, and in the old paragraph 654, in the application that we received back when we looked at it for the first time, there was a sentence there. We also propose that a shuttle bus service to and from Iron Bridge is provided for customers staying at the site. That doesn't appear to be in the new proposal. Is that just is something that's just been withdrawn?
Yeah, looking at the condition as well. Yeah.
Sorry, Gemma's just going to respond to you on this. She's been looking in detail at the technical notes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just I refer members to a technical note that was submitted by the applicant's consultant dated the 27th of April 2022, because I believe that it was one of the clarity at the last committee meeting in terms of clarity of sustainable transport measures proposed. Within that report, they do confirm, sorry, I just lost my place again, so that effectively they would they would be putting forward a planning condition securing the shuttle bus scheme, and the wording would be as follows: prior to the first occupation of the leisure site, the operator of the development shall submit in writing for approval to the local planning authority the proposed details of operating system of the shuttle bus scheme, which will run between the site and Iron Bridge Walk car park. Shuttle bus service as agreed shall operate for the lifetime of the development in accordance with the agreed details of an operating system. So,
yeah, that's good.
Thank you for that. Right, we now have some speakers on this one. Are you Sue Jones, the local resident, please?
Yes.
And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sue Jones. I'm currently Chair of Leighton Eaton Constantine Parish Council, next door to Buildwas. Thank you for letting me speak. The cumulative impact of the Iron Bridge Power Station development and this proposal on the small village of Buildwas and surrounding road networks is a real concern. Has the combined impact of traffic from both sites when fully operational been fully considered? I must urge you to consider the residential amenity of the residents living near the access point to the proposed site from the B4380. The main concerns are with touring caravans using this access. Noise, dust, fumes, vibrations from the vehicles pulling caravans up the steep gradient slope so close to residential properties will impact negatively on those properties and residents. What happens when 2 large caravans meet on that steep access lane? It'll be chaotic. This is surely an inadequate access. There is a huge safety issue with the access of this site being so close to the Buildwas Spank junction of the B4380 and the A41969. There have already been 3 serious accidents at this junction between 2017 and 2021, including fatalities, and 3 more in the past 6 months. These cannot be ignored. By adding large touring caravans to the mix of quarry lorries and construction traffic from the Iron Bridge site, increased general traffic from both developments and vulnerable road users such as cyclists and pedestrians, you are asking for trouble. The proposed roundabout at the Buildwas Junction site and the pedestrian crossing proposed could be years away. Would it not be wise to remove touring caravans from this mix? Surely another more suitable access point to the leisure park is required at least. With 120 static and 35 touring caravan site pitches, there will be a lot of extra traffic on all access roads around the site, particularly on changeover days. The B4380 is a narrow rural road, a national cycle route with vulnerable road users. There is already a problem of speeding traffic using this road. Traffic calming measures have already been agreed as needed for the village of Leighton by Shropshire Council back in 2017. The Police and Camera Safety Partnership regularly speed trap Leighton and agree there is a problem. Harworth plc have agreed to put build-outs at either end of Leighton Village by the completion of the 50th house on the site. This could be years away. If this leisure park application is approved, then further traffic calming measures will be needed in Leighton immediately. These will need to be financed either by Shropshire Council or the developer. Adding extra traffic to the existing traffic problems is a real concern for both parishes, and because of this, we have to object to this application.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Sue, please? No. Thank you very much. Are there any Kathy? Is she right?
I'm afraid not. She's been stuck in traffic. I did speak to her briefly, and if it'll only take a couple of minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm talking this afternoon on behalf of Rowan Pratt, who's chair of Guildford Parish Council. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things, really. The main access is 50 metres from the bottom of Builders Bank, where they're going to put that huge roundabout in. The number of accidents there've been 3 in the last 6 months. And my vice chair, Simon Heath, who lives right at the bottom bank there, has comforted people with life-changing injuries before the ambulance got there. It is absolutely horrendous. It's so dangerous. I want to talk about the cumulative impact on the local residents, because the access is just so dangerous. And I just urge you to sort out exactly what is happening about the visibility display before you allow this to go forward. That I think there are concerns on both sides of the proposed access. Harworth are building 1,000 homes which will access onto this roundabout. You know that because we've done all this before. Harworth are having to pay about £4 million in money contributions towards the highways. This application is for roughly 15% of that. Yet there's nothing. They're not paying any money at all for highway improvements. On the last application, there was 5,000. This is nothing. There's no 106 monies. There's no road safety audit. And actually, this is me. I do concur with what Councillor Parsons said earlier. About these things just coming, just getting passed down the road. And I think the biggest fear for everybody is that actually this will be built without these things happening, and people are going to get killed. Thank you, Chairman. That's Lorraine.
Thank you. Right, you can be yourself now.
No, I can be myself now. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to be. I should be quite quick. Thank you for allowing me to address you all today. I still have serious concerns over this application, and these concerns all relate to highway safety matters. The public access to the site, as I understand it, will be only off the B4380. The access egress is by the A4169, and it's for emergency only. Visibility at the access point on the B4380 is restricted and needs significant improvement. Highways officers, indeed the applicant, have recognised this, and not only is it reflected in the officer report, but is also subject to a condition. Condition 12, page 63, and it reads as follows. Before any other operations are commenced, proposed vehicular access and visibility displays shall be provided and constructed to base course level. Thereafter, the access shall be completed to the approved detail before the development is fully occupied and thereafter maintained. The area in advance of the sightline shall be kept permanently clear of all obstructions. And the reason is to ensure that the development should not prejudice the free flow of traffic and conditions of safety on the highway, nor cause inconvenience to other highway users for the duration of the site construction and in perpetuity. Within the report, page 55, paragraph 6.5.3, the agent's applicant refers to the recent boundary work to improve the required level of visibility. Information has been passed to me, the head of Highway Development Control, the head of planning, and the chair, that these works have taken place on third-party land and are subject to legal challenge. The last line of page 67, page 19, under the heading of protection or visibility displays on private land, it states, the applicant's attention is drawn to the need to ensure that the provision of the visibility display or displays required by this consent is safeguarded in any sale of the application, site or parts thereof. Therefore, I ask this committee to defer this application again until the ownership or control of the visibility displays are confirmed, as they are an integral part of the highway safety measures needed for the safe operation of this site. If for some reason committee are minded to approve this application, please can it be strictly conditioned that no works are to commence until the ownership or control of the visibility displays are resolved to the satisfaction of Highway Development Control. This is a particularly dangerous stretch of road, and we need to get this absolutely right. And my concern is that things are going to happen before the visibility issue is resolved and people are going to get killed. Please, committee, please get this issue resolved and make it safe before any work starts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions, Claire, please? Yep. Okay, thank you. Right, we'll now call on Amy Henson, the agent for the applicant, please. Send you a 3 minute Amy to the rest of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you in support of this application. As you are aware from the late representations, I just wanted to point out that there has been a 4x4 track operation that has existed on the bottom half of the site, and the details of that should be within the late representations. We have, as you know, we have provided updated drawings and further highways information within a technical note that was submitted in April. That shows how the site will operate and what highways improvements are proposed, such as the Ghost Lane, for example, and how the development will interact with the highways alterations that were approved under the Harworth Iron Bridge redevelopment scheme. We do need to stress that the two proposals are completely independent from each other and don't rely on each other on the highway improvements from either scheme to facilitate one or the other. Shropshire Council's highways officers are in agreement with this on this point, and as you know, raised no objection. We have we have really looked into this and spent a lot of time in trying to address the concerns that you raised previously. Access into the site the access has been widened, and it does meet highway safety requirements with regards to visibility. We have provided Tim with photographic evidence of the boundary fence line, which, whilst we appreciate it's not strictly a planning matter, it does show that works to widen the access have taken place within the landowner's land. At the time of installing the timber fence along the access road, the existing boundary fence, which sits behind it, is shown as a post and wire fence, and that is shown on the photographs that have been submitted. Tracking and swept path analysis have all been provided that show that two towing vehicles can safely pass each other when entering and leaving the site. We are seeking permission to change the use of the land to a holiday caravan site, providing 120 static lodges and 35 touring caravans. Therefore, the majority of the vehicles accessing the site will be cars, or light vehicles, with 35 pitches left to touring caravans, therefore towing vehicles. This is a well-designed scheme in a sustainable location. It will be a high-quality visitor, providing high-quality visitor accommodation, and will make a significant contribution to the local economy. It will be possible for customers to walk, cycle and be dropped by shuttle bus to Ironbridge, allowing them to enjoy the rich cultural heritage of the area in a sustainable manner. We have received a letter of interest in purchasing the site from a local leisure company based in Telford. They manufacture holiday lodges and would operate the site. They're already a significant employer in the area and would create more jobs, job opportunities for local people. This is all in line with the development plan and sustainable rural tourism sought and encouraged by national planning policy. This is a high quality leisure site, with the council having control via condition of the appearance of the lodges and their external finish. This will ensure that they fit well within the rural hillside setting. Landscaping and tree planting is proposed as part of the scheme and will help to soften the site as they mature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Amy, please?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Gwilym Butler, please.
Thank you for your clarifications. Now, we've got numerous of these sites around the county, and historically they can cause all sorts of problems. When you say it's a holiday site, will all the static lodges or caravans or whatever remain in the ownership of one person and be let out for holidays? Or, for example, will I be able to buy one and just use it solely for my own purpose?
I'm afraid at this stage that ultimately falls down to the choice of the operator, so I can't confirm.
My reason for that is because if I would decide to have one there, because I live in the south of the county, somewhere there, I would also probably not let it out, but then I would have Sainsbury's to deliver my grocery, and I would have mail delivered there. I would have all sorts of other things going on, so there wouldn't be just the normal traffic going up that road. There'll probably be an awful lot of other traffic going up that road, and also we've had all sorts of problems in the past about them turning into full-time usage. Is there any restrictions on this application that the site has to be closed for a month? I just wondered, that's all, because I would like that imposed if we were to proceed, because otherwise I think most members around this table know what happens to a lot of these. Just a few queries to start us off. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Amy?
Oh, sorry, was that directed to me?
Sorry.
Sorry. So there are conditions imposed relating to the occupation of those lodges, that they can't be a permanent residential address. So the operator would hold all of those details and ensure that they don't permanently live within those lodges.
There's no interpretation of closing it for a month to make sure that didn't happen.
Not at this stage, no.
Okay,
no.
Okay. Any other questions for Amy, please? Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you want to come back to this?
Yeah, just on that final point, direct members to page 61, I think it is, of the update report. Conditions 5 and 6 are the conditions that restrict the use solely to holiday use and requiring a register to be kept. But the closure of the site for a month is something historically that has been imposed on, but there are real issues around monitoring and of those conditions. It's easier to just have a blanket condition that says they cannot be used as somebody's permanent place of residence and have to be used for holiday accommodation.
Thank you. Gemma, you want to come back with any other issue there, please?
Oh, sorry. Do you want to say the plan?
Yes, apologies, Chairman. Yeah, so there was a couple of matters that were raised with regard to the accident history along the route itself and the construction. I think there was a comment from Leighton Parish Council with regard to the construction for the Ironbridge Power Station and the interaction between the vehicles. As we have been here before, but just to clarify that the construction vehicles for Ironbridge will not be routing along the B4380. So in terms of there was concerns raised about the proximity between Wildross Bank and the works to be taken, so the visibility display and the access for this site and works to build water bank, that the applicant has submitted details with regard to how the two will interact, and they will be subject to legal agreements and technical approval process. So depending on the timescales for the delivery of both, there'll be an opportunity. I think there's a query raised with regard to the timing of the access improvements, and we've confirmed that the visibility display that's put forward is acceptable, so we'd support a planning condition that requires those details to be fully implemented, submitted for approval and implemented prior to commencement of any works in accordance with the approved plan. So the approved plan shows that the visibility displays are in accordance with a traffic speed survey that was done, and we're satisfied that the visibility that is proposed is suitable for the surrounding road conditions, subject to it being implemented with regard to any land ownership issues. I think that's it.
Thank you, Gemma. Do you want to come back to that, Tim?
Yeah, just Gemma's covered it to a degree. Just to clarify, in terms of the provision of the visibility displays, they are shown, the proposed visibility displays, which Gemma has referred to as being acceptable to the developing highways team, are shown on one of the approved plans. And the proposed condition says that the visibility display should be provided and constructed before any other operations are commenced. We could tighten that up so that it specifically references the plan in that condition, but it would be one of the approved conditions that is tied up, that would be covered by a requirement to carry out the development in accordance with the approved plans.
Okay.
But we could specifically reference it in that condition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tindall, please.
Yes, I've got 2 points to make. One, I have sympathy with what William Buckler was getting at, was closing the site for at least a month. The reason I say that, because in my ward and no doubt in others, we have holiday lodges or holiday chalets, and it's manifestly abused. A lot of people living there permanently, and they end up not paying council tax. I think this is entirely wrong. We don't have the resources as an enforcement authority to check the logbooks, the registers, to make sure that people really are only there for recreational purposes and not permanent residents. And I would have thought it was easier to enforce, notwithstanding what Tim has just said, if we had a month's shutdown when the gates are closed and no one could go in or out. So I'm going to propose that as a condition. And the second thing, and I think it would have been helpful, and perhaps Graham could have helped on this one, it is quite close to the Buildwas power station site, isn't it? And I understand the concerns, which may be real or apparent, about the intermingling of the traffic going to one side and the other, and we haven't got a map, as far as I know, that shows the interrelationship between the two proposals. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert. Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think up until yesterday, when we received the late representation, I was certainly in favour of supporting this application, because I think that the new entrance and the display dealt with a number of the issues that we had previously raised, and the use of the land for a caravan park, I don't think was ever really an issue. It was just to do with safe entrance and exit. But now I'm fearful, I think a little like Claire Wilde, that if we approve it now and then this legal dispute over the entrance ends up with the neighbour winning his case, I'd like to see some really tight words if we did approve it that then didn't say that the applicant could come back and seek to have it amended to the original entry and exit situation. Because look, we've seen this again today in that very first application that we dealt with at Woodcote, where they were going to build a traffic island on the exit from that site, then found that they couldn't acquire the necessary land to do that, and their roundabout got scrapped. You know, so we must make sure that this is not going to come back to us again with a a wish to go back to the original entrance and exit. It must be sealed down if we're going to accept this.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've looked at this application for so long now, and I think the last time that it came before the committee, we deferred it because we had concerns of the highways and how it would affect. Obviously, they've come back. Now, as much as highways and as much as the applicant want to get away from the Ironbridge power station and this development being linked, they are intrinsically linked. We've got to consider this. We're going to have 15 years of development and construction traffic for the Ironbridge power development that's been approved. The B4380 doesn't actually concern me as much as Bilberus Bank. When we look at Bilberus Bank, it's a very, very steep bank. I know this very well. I mean, I've said before, I'm involved in transport. I've actually driven a fully loaded Arctic down Bilberus Bank with 40 tonnes on board. If somebody slams their brakes on at the bottom of that bank, you are really scared. You are absolutely laying everything on to stop that lorry. Now, what does cause me concern, and I listened to what the chair of Leighton Parish Council was saying, I think if it was just 120 static caravans, I wouldn't have any issues with this at all, because I'm all for increasing the rural economy and especially bringing tourists into the area and sharing structure with tourism. I think though, when we're looking at this, even with the right-hand lane that we're talking about having built, to have potentially 70 caravan movements in any given day in and out of that site on changeover days really does scare me, because you would only need more than 2 caravans to be waiting in the lane to turn right, and then they would actually be on the carriageway from the Bilberus bypass. It does send a shiver down my spine. I listened to what Claire Wilde said as well about some of the people and some of the accidents that have happened there, and this is why we have to look at this in association with other developments that have been passed in the area. They cannot be separated. As I say, with the Ironbridge power station development, we've got 15 years of construction traffic, plus all the additional residential traffic, and then we've got this on top. I'm not sure about this development. I do agree as well about the visibility displays. Whilst that's up in the air as to who's got ownership of that, I think that it should be deferred, or at least put off, that it cannot be approved until ownership is actually approved for displays and proven.
Thank you. Councillor Lombury, please.
When it come before us last time, we did get very involved with the traffic side of it, but I'm not sure we actually debated the sustainability of it, which effectively wants to put 160 units in farmland that I don't think we've had the designation of it, what category the farmland is, because before tracks take up the bottom of it, but all of a sudden we've got this need to have this huge development there. Now, part of the development criteria is it's got to be for the economy. Now, is this the economy of Shropshire? Because you think about these people that are going to be there. Where are the workers coming from? Up the road, 1.5 miles away, is Horsey and Lightmoor, which is in Telford. They've also, when they come out, where are they going to go? Well, primarily, the shuttle bus is an example, they're going to go to Ironbridge. That's on Telford. So where are they actually going to be spending the money in Shropshire to gain for our economy? Because I can't see that. Now, legally, we might not be able to decide that. but I just want everybody to be aware that what we're actually doing is shoving a development right next to the edge of Telford and Wrekin so that they can go and enjoy themselves. 'Cause where are they going to go for their shopping? Now, it's 3 miles away to go into Telford to do all your shopping, but it's what, 6, 7 miles to Muchwellock, 10, 12 miles to Shrewsbury. Those people will not be using Shropshire, as far as I'm concerned. So, and the sustainability of it, I'm concerned because there's an increased amount of journeys. I don't believe that it is the right place to have walkers and cyclists that are going to be on them really busy roads. Although I accept if there was a safe means to get over, to get onto towards Iron Ridge, but there's no proposals for cycle lanes and everything else. The irony is that should the roundabout be built, then it will make it safer for these two. I'm a caravanner, I've got an incredibly long caravan. The worst thing I can be doing is sitting and turning right, waiting for someone to go shunts to the backside. So I'm still open on this one because I want the development, but I'm not sure it should be there. And with 1,000 houses, which I supported, I think we're just adding to what is meant to be a rural area.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, please.
Thank you. This is an interesting one to say the least. In which way you can actually look at it. There's a few issues that sum up to me is I don't think the application is complete yet, and the officers can advise me if I'm wrong. I believe the land ownership of the splay is not a material planning consideration. However, we don't wish to put the council into a situation that we can't enforce the splay because there is a civil dispute over the land ownership. So we would need, in my opinion, confirmation from the officers that they are satisfied with the ownership of the land prior to any commencement, if we were minded to approve it. That would be something I need advice on. Secondly, the sustainability of the site, because I know it's quite a drive up there, but people are going to be walking out of that site because it's only human nature. If you're on holiday, you're going to have a mooch around the place, aren't you? And I'd like to know what's in the Build West Place plan for their infrastructure support, because this is going to be a huge money earner for the developer, massive money earner, with the annual service charge, rental income, service rents. So what's the community getting out of it? As far as I can see at the moment, diddly squat. So that's a technical term to leave.
John saying.
So I think they need to come back and understand the needs of the community in line with the Howard development, and actually put, if they wanted to go forward, to put something back for the community to make this site acceptable and to perhaps increase the sustainability of the community. Furthermore, looking at the other difficult sites we've looked at today with quarry lorries, I don't see any reason why we haven't had a traffic audit report, both as it is now and how it is projected in the future in relation to that junction. And those are my comments, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that, Gemma, or do you want to leave it all? We've got traffic audit report now and in the future.
Yeah, I think what we would do is we would make an assessment whether a road safety audit. I was just checking on the original submission whether there was a road safety audit that was submitted, and there was certainly traffic count, but I don't believe there was a road safety audit, so it was just subject to a safety assessment really by our consultants and ourselves as Highway Authority. If the application is permitted, then the works will be subject to a section 278 agreement, which at that point would be subject to a road safety audit before they implement any works, and it would be part of the process that the final submission would require a stage 1, stage 2 safety audit, and then post implementation there would be a stage 3 road safety audit that would pick up any safety concerns once it's actually been constructed.
Okay. Councillor Lott, please.
Thank you. I'm just curious why, because there's so much concern about the entrance from the bottom. Why is the entrance at the north not considered? Is that because it's coming off a very busy A road and that's just too dangerous? You know, that's, I mean.
Yeah, Gemma, I'll defer to Gemma.
Yeah, so in terms of that access off the Belfast Bank, it isn't an access that we would support, that we would be concerned about approach vehicle speeds, visibility and vehicles. So we do see that the proposed access is the optimum location. Yeah, we wouldn't, and I think as part of the consultation, it's very close to the Telford border. I think in actual fact, it probably does slightly go into Telford and Meakins boundary, and they'd expressed concerns previously about the use of that access, and they want to see it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's a good.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief because most of the points that I've written down have been raised. I am concerned about the cumulative impact, as has been mentioned already. I towed a touring caravan for about 35 years, including the biggest outfits that you can have, big twin axles, and I would be concerned if I was waiting to turn right into that site, especially if I was second in the queue. On all the big, large caravan sites that I've been to, including abroad, there was always a one-way system on large caravan sites, and the whole point of that was that two touring caravans couldn't meet each other head on. So I question whether, even though they've got passing places, whether that lane, being on a steep bank as it is, you'll have problems in wet weather, never mind in clement weather when there's a bit of ice and snow about. So I would assume that that lane needed to be made two-way, as I would be. I mean, it's quite a long lane after all. I'm talking about the access lane, and as regards to visibility display, yes, I do wait for officers to tell us, as far as I understand, in the same way that you can ask to build a house on somebody else's garden, even though you haven't got access to it. I would assume that's not a material planning consideration, the visibility display being on somebody else's land. But I wait to be advised. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bagel, please.
Thank you. Yes, I echo what some of my colleagues have said about the concern about the ownership of the land. I think that's something that needs to be looked into quite carefully. I'm also concerned about the volume of traffic, particularly traffic towing large caravans, and the impact of that on the safety of the area. I think another thing that we ought to be considering is the fact that there aren't local amenities that can be walked to. People who are staying at the living site are not going to be able to walk to buy their groceries or to go to the local pub and so on. So it's not just about people, the number of vehicles going in and out on going out for the day. It's also possibly them going out for the evening as well, or going out to get some shopping. So I think we might actually be looking at more vehicle numbers, higher vehicle numbers than we anticipated.
Thank you.
Just with regard to the land ownership issue, I come back to the point that the plans, we've got plans which show the visibility display that's required and the works to the access that is required. Now, if those can't be provided because it involves or it requires the use of third-party land, then and that third party is not willing to allow the visibility displays to be provided or the works to be done, then the development can't be done in accordance with the plans and therefore can't be undertaken. So, and the condition requires the visibility displays and the works to the access to be done before there's any other development. So it isn't a material consideration because we don't need to ascertain whether or not it does involve third-party land at this stage before you make a decision, because clearly if it did involve third-party land, then clearly the works would need to be seen and authorised on site. If it did involve third-party land, then it could be prevented.
Thank you. Yes, Brandon.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to a comment made by Councillor Butler regarding contributions to the community, just for the avoidance of doubt, of course, this sort of development isn't subject to the community infrastructure levy. So there isn't a mechanism in place for that sort of contribution, and any other contribution would need to satisfy the relevant legal test. So it would need to be necessary to make the development acceptable and would need to relate to the development and be reasonable in scale and kind. So at the moment, there's no suggestion that this development needs to contribute to some other form of community infrastructure. I can see why it might be nice, but it probably might not be lawful. Just to be aware of that.
Thank you. Continue.
I don't want to put words into Gwilym's mouth. I don't think he was getting at contribution to structure. I thought it was more to the economy and. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway. That is for the infrastructure.
Well, can we have a council to make a proposal?
It sounds like from the chair.
Could you put the usability up again when it's disputed ownership of the land?
Well,
That's it.
just check that that's the latest one. Yes, it is.
Well, by offensive.
That's on
You can't see it very well on that plan, but the visibility display in a westerly direction, 2.4 meters by. I can't even see that with my glasses. 95.2, is it?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, I can read it on that. Yeah, so 93.2
93.2, and in the other direction is
is 89.
89 meters. So, and that shows it as crossing land that's within the applicant's ownership.
Yeah.
As you've heard, as you have already heard, that is contested. But I think I've already explained where we stand on that with regard to the neighbour's position.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, please.
I'd like to just, this doesn't sit right with me, Chair, I'm sorry, for whatever reasons, I don't feel comfortable. I'd like to come back to Councillor Luff's issues regarding the northern exit as well. And I'd be very curious to know whether Telford actually turned it down and we're the second choice. And has it been investigated whether a one-way system could be put in and that can just be an exit, for example? And I think we should have the answer for that, because it would make it probably better. As it stands at the moment, I would turn it down as there's insufficient road safety audit. I'd like a road safety audit report. It's done externally before I could put my hand to this one. So I propose that we actually object to the recommendations on the grounds we need further information.
Councillor Marshall, yeah.
Could I just ask Miranda a question on that point? Because I am minded to agree with Councillor Butler. Are we legally allowed to do that, to defer and insist on a road safety audit, Miranda?
I mean, you effectively have three options open to you today, members. You can approve it as per the officer recommendation or with some amended conditions if you feel that's appropriate. You can refuse it, providing that you have sufficient planning reasons, or you can defer it, but you need to be aware of the risks of so doing. The applicant might appeal for non-determination, and you also need to be clear of the reasons you would be deferring and what you would be requiring in order to be able to reach a decision.
Yes, I'm still not satisfied. I really understand what the relationship between this proposal is and the power station proposal. I can't help feeling there's going to be an awful lot of large traffic, and I would certainly go along for a deferral until we have that firmly shown and on a composite map, so we really do understand who's going where. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Marshall.
Okay, thank you for that advice, and I'll take that on board. With that noted, I actually will propose that we refuse it for the road safety conditions that are there, And if it is put back in front, it has to come forward with a road safety audit.
Okay. That's what you said, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll second
I'll
it.
second that, yeah.
Right, so we're gonna-
It's refusal, not deferral.
Chair, through you, so if the proposal is refusal, then we need to know the grounds that you wish to refuse it, on, because what you appear to be saying is that if it comes before you, you want a road safety audit. So are you saying you want to refuse it at this stage rather than deferring because you feel you have insufficient information to be satisfied that the highways aspects of this development are safe? And by that, I'm assuming you mean the access for the development. But what you've heard from the applicants, experts and the highways people is that they are satisfied it's safe. And they have had external consultants have also looked at it from a safety point of view. So we just really, as officers, need to properly understand the reasons for your proposed refusal.
From my point of view, then it is the fact that there's not a sufficient road safety audit. Even though the officers and the professionals have looked at this, and at the last time it came in front of the committee, we deferred it because we weren't happy with the highways. We're now saying that it's refused until there is a road safety audit that's conducted thoroughly.
Through you, Chair, we can't refuse something until it's a refusal. That's it, done then. So it would then, the applicant's options are obviously appeal or resubmit. But if you're saying you want something, you're wanting to sort of say something until, then that's a deferral. So you need to be clear. A refusal is a refusal. There's no sort of until in it, really. That's the end of it if you refuse it, so far as you're concerned at this stage.
Mr. Martin, you want to come back there?
No.
Mr. Bill, do you want to come back?
I'm just thinking, Chair, give me a minute.
Yeah, no, in the meantime, we'll have Councillor Parson.
I think I'd like to propose an amendment, and that is that we defer it and request a road safety audit, and that we would then consider the matter from there rather than refuse it for a road safety audit. We defer for a road safety audit.
I think, Chair, without not wanting to lead members in any way, I think that's the preferred option for myself, because it then gives the applicants have heard what's been said, they know what's required, they can either choose to come back with a road safety audit and try to allay your concerns, or they can choose to appeal on non-determination because they believe they've provided sufficient information. That gives them the two options.
That's not been next, please.
I still think that it ought to be as well that sustainability for that development there has got to be further clarified, because at the moment I think it's an unsuitable development in that area. So the shuttle bus to Ironbridge is just not enough. It's about what else they're going to do to make that business sustainable in relation to MD11 and CS16.
Am I right in assuming that this site effectively is open countryside? Yeah. So are we not sending out a message, because this is not a sustainable area at the moment until the Haworth is built, if it is ever built? We can't presume that. We can only look at what's in front of us. So realistically, this is not all we're actually going to do is get people on holiday, put them in the middle of open countryside with no walkable facilities, or even a bus stop probably, or a bus service to get anywhere. Now, in my mind, we as a council are actually opening the door for this to happen anywhere. And we should have sites that are sustainable, that don't need to use combustion engine or any other engines to get their sustainability, in my mind. And like I said before, it doesn't sit right. I think the access is as a whole is a minor point for me. And I think it's the wrong site and the wrong place.
Yeah. Can I just refuse? Sorry, just take everything that I'm.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
And maybe we need to support Councillor Marshall's proposal if we defer, is that right?
Yeah, I'll go with defer.
If we could have another reason, and that is we still don't understand how it's all going to interact with the Bill Glass Power Station site. If that could be another reason for deferral, I think it's so critical.
Well, just on that issue, when you say interact, you mean in highway, with regards to the highway impacts?
Yes, yes, I do.
So that would form part of the road safety audit that you're requesting, it should the applicant choose to do.
Well, I'm glad you confirmed that, because I think Councillor Wild was concerned about the two projects.
I'll bring Tim back in now, please, and then we'll go back to the Parsons.
I hear what you say, Councillor Lundy, and if the motion is to defer because of that insufficient information, you could, of course, include a request that there's further information provided in terms of the sustainability of the location. I would just remind you that and point you to the original committee report which came before you, paragraph 7.5. Does conclude, and we as officers have concluded that the proposal does satisfy the overreaching objectives for sustainable development as set out in the NPPF, and that we do and does accord with our own policies, in our opinion, in terms of the sustainability of the location, and it's the policies in there to promote tourism as one of the big economy drivers within Shropshire. So, but you could request that further information as part of any deferral.
Probably, Tim's probably given the answer to what I was going to say. I mean, I think, when we heard this the first time, we deferred it on the grounds of road safety issues and the impact of the power station traffic on it. We didn't at that stage defer it for sustainability. So I think to bring that back now would probably be wrong. And I would just look to defer awaiting that road safety audit.
Okay, well, I will second that.
Who's the proposer then?
Both were Johnny Parsons.
I'm not proposing it.
I think we'll only ever proposing that.
This is one really. Right, we put that.
Can Gemma just?
Yeah, Gemma.
Apologies. I just wanted to clarify the scope of the road safety audit, if it is being deferred on that basis. Just taking on board comments that were made by Councillor Hignett with regard to not only the reference to the access in terms of visibility, but also the access road and the approach road as well, and whether members would be minded to kind of agree the scope of the road safety audit that includes kind of access into the site, which includes the access track.
And I think what someone said earlier about the fact that at the moment the route onto Buildwas Bank is not part of the plan. It's an emergency exit, but it is worth looking as to whether that can be only acting as an exit, but on a one-way system.
I agree. So that can be part of the audit, please.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, we get the proposal for a deferral on the
Have we excluded sustainability then?
well, it was covered in the last application. Right.
Through you, Chair, before you asked me to put this, so as the proposer and the seconder not asking for further information about sustainability, just to be clear on the motion. Thank you. Okay.
What was that?
I think just to clarify, the proposer and the seconder are not in their motion asking for further information about sustainability based on the further comments received from the officer.
Okay, can you take the vote, please, Melinda?
Thank you. So the proposal is for deferral, as you have heard, for the reasons given. Councillor Bagnall, are you for or against?
For.
Councillor Butler?
For.
Councillor Hignett?
For.
Councillor Luff?
For.
Councillor Lumby?
Abstain.
Councillor Marshall?
For.
Councillor Parsons?
For.
Councillor Tyndall?
For.
Councillor Evans?
For.
That is passed, Chair.
Thank you. Recommended for deferral. Right, we go to item number 7 then. To the affordable dwelling and residence doing.
Chairman, would you permit me to give a map? Sorry, I can't hear you with my.
If you just bring your local member, you can show the map then.
Yes.
Yes, nobody's outside from that, mate. Nobody else that's not even talking to, right, okay.
Well, it came in late to the planning officer.
We haven't come time to it, so if you just want to show it when you do apply to your speak, that's fine.
Well, Sean Jones wrote to the case officer, that's the agent, asking for it to be included.
Oh,
I'm sorry, it's a pity that
it's
it's
the latest plan that.
very late.
Showing that site, yes, that's included in this.
Oh, right.
Slide in this.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, that's all I wanted to know.
That one.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, because I had no confirmation from the case officer that he was going to include it. So I took the liberty of printing off my own special copies
Okay.
of that said now.
All right.
Be nice if the case officer responded.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for a proposed affordable dwelling at Middleton, Scriven. It's an application which, as you will see, I'll just run through the proposal. The application site is outlined in red on that plan. So the dwelling, the proposed dwelling would sit in the middle of that area that's outlined in red. You'll see there's an existing property, the poplars, to the east of the proposed dwelling. There's another property, don't know the name of that, but directly across the road. You'll see that in photographs shortly. That's the design of the proposed dwelling to go on the site, single story, as you see. And that's the proposed garage. I would point out at this stage, although the application is recommended for approval, and I'll come back to the reasons for that in a moment, officers aren't objecting to the actual design of the proposed dwelling, or aren't recommending refusal in terms of design. Sorry, that's just locating where the coal mining activity is. It's outside of that area. Just wanted to show you some photographs of the site. So that the first photograph, top left, is looking north from within the site. If I just take you back to the that site plan, if you can see immediately to the northeast of the dwelling, you've got that kind of right angle turn in the land ownership there. I believe that is marked by that fence there. So you're looking north from the middle of the site where the proposed dwelling would be. You're looking north. On the top right photograph, you are looking south, and that's the dwelling that I referred to across the road. The bottom one of those is, I think, looking east. East, yes. Sorry, not east, west.
Okay.
It's looking west because looking east is towards the is towards the other dwelling, the poplars, I believe. And then you've got two photographs which show the views of the lane from the existing access to the adjoining property. The report sets out the primary considerations around the proposal. Again, I would stress that officers aren't concerned by the design of the proposed dwelling, and neither are officers suggesting that the applicant doesn't meet the criteria required to justify an affordable dwelling. It's the location of the plot, and B, in terms of its connection or otherwise with the settlement that is the cause of concern to us as officers. The policy requires that the proposed site for a dwelling should form part of a recognised settlement, and as officers, we're not convinced that in this case, it does so. And we gave that advice on a number of occasions with regard to pre-application inquiries, but notwithstanding that, the application has been made, and you will see from the report that it's supported by the parish council and I believe the local member in terms of its location and its relationship with kind of adjacent properties and with Middleton Scriven. That last diagram shows on the western side the kind of the main body of Middleton Scriven as a settlement. So this area here, the application site is actually here. That's a farm that the access runs to immediately to the west of the application site here. That's the adjoining property there, and then there is a property directly across the road, and there is another property at this point. But as officers, we're concerned that as a cluster doesn't form a recognised settlement and is sufficiently divorced from the main body of Middleton Scriven to not meet the requirements of the policy. But that is the main point in question, and it's a question has been tasked to this committee on a number of occasions as to whether or not a location does or does not form part of a named settlement. The other consideration is, I just moved back in terms of the layout. As you'll see, the property is set back from the road. It's not immediately adjacent to the road. It's set back into the field. The concern is that that's not a recognised pattern of development, notwithstanding what's happened with the poplars there. In our view, ideally the plot should be located, adjacent to the highway and take up a corner of a field rather than a more centralised area of the field. And clearly the temptation will be thereafter to extend the kind of the garden area of the proposed dwelling into the remainder of the field, thus making it less affordable in the future.
Changes to the design.
I think, Chair, that's
why are we talking? Sorry to interrupt.
No, I was about to make that point.
The principle of having it there was. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Maybe it might come.
Sorry,
just so people can hear.
Yeah. Sorry, with your approval, Chair. Reading the report, the principle of having the property there had been agreed in March. I thought the report was just for the material changes to the design, not the principle of having it where it is.
Chairman, could I add to that? That there is only minor variations to design, which relates to the stable block lighting, and I think some skylights on the rear elevation. The principle of having this dwelling here was, as William Butler said, approved. And Tim has not mentioned that in his report. It was most certainly approved, I think, unanimously. The only reason it's come back is because late in the day, I accept, but nevertheless, it's been discovered that the Western Power distribution cables would go over or clip the southern elevation of the building, and they do not like buildings within 3 meters of power lines. So, sorry, am I interrupting something?
Yeah, I need to. Listen to Tim first, then we take the speakers.
Sorry?
Is this your presentation?
No, it's not.
No, I'm supporting William Butler's remark that this has already been approved, which Tim didn't mention.
If you're in to speak, Robert.
All right.
I just think we're going around the houses, Chair.
So what?
Let's take the officer's report first, then we take the speakers, then we have the debate, all right? Okay, you can carry on there, please, Tim. We did have a site visit there, it wasn't.
okay. Apologies, Chair. That is the report does make that clear at 1.3, and that was my apologies, my misunderstanding. So yes, the officer's recommendation was for refusal at that time. The officer recommendation is still for refusal. Members were minded to approve, or resolved to approve the application last time, and you're right, it's the details that are being up for consideration at this point in time. So it's the altered sighting, garage, roof end orientation. I do apologise. I've made an error in respect to that presentation. So
I accept it entirely.
I do apologise. So that is what's now being proposed. As you say, it's amended location due to Western Power, the power lines running through the site. So the principle has been established by the previous decision. So you're just considering whether or not the amended position and that the details as shown there are acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Tindall, you now address the committee as a local member, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. 3.
5 minutes. I won't.
I'll make it 2, yes.
Okay.
No, I'm glad to have had the opportunity, along with Will and Butler, to confirm that this committee has approved the principle of an affordable dwelling in this site. It's only after the approval was given by us. I mean, it's not actually, the planning commission has not yet been issued because the section 106 agreement is still outstanding and they take some time to come through. It is because of the power lines, and to ask Western Power to move those power lines would cost, I imagine, a great deal of money. So all we're asking the constituent, I mean, my constituent organisation, is that the house is allowed to be built something like the distance between Willem and myself back from the approved position. As I said the last time, we cannot come forward towards the highway because of the sewage systems that lie in the ground, and I think they are shown quite clearly. If you could go back to the right plan, the previous plan, there you could see 2 lines. Well, one exists and one will exist of the soakaway systems called 2 septic tanks. So even if we even if the house is built close to but not on top of the existing drainage field, it would really prevent itself having its own drainage field, if I make sense. So I would make a plea that the committee does not refuse this on the reasons I've just said. Thank you. I will take a back seat, you know, please.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Right, now we have the agent, Sean Jones from Hall, please, who has called the application. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. This application, as just described, has been approved unanimously. I recall that's your March committee, and we were very grateful for that. This is a very simple adjustment to the application, basically to move the dwelling a further 3.5 metres further up the slope, so it's far enough away from the Western Power overhead cables. It also involves a couple of minor alterations, 2 roof lights going in and adjusting the orientation of the roof line of the garage, but they're relatively straightforward matters. The planning officer advised that because of the wish to move the dwelling, it would need to come back to committee. So as you approved it last time in terms of principle, I hope you'd be kind enough to support it again on this this occasion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
I haven't got a question, Chair. Have you finished?
Yes.
So can I?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I think this is very straightforward, and I propose that we accept it.
Councillor Parsons, you want to come in?
Can I have a point of order? I'm a little confused as to whether the officer now are saying that they will grant it or oppose it, and what they're still opposing it on. Or is it because it's a reapplication, they have to go back to their original, didn't want it in the first place? It's important.
The officer recommendation hasn't changed, but the application remains undetermined. It's not a new application, so it does have to come back to committee, given that there's a change. But it was clear, it's clear what the committee resolution was last time. So unless you have any fundamental problems with the amended location, I would assume that you come to the same decision, notwithstanding that our recommendation remains as it was.
Councillor Parsons.
Yes, I'll second the proposal that we accept this application. I don't believe that the changes to it are so significant as to undermine the decision that we took at the earlier meeting. So I'll second that it's accepted.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, and I'm probably in total agreement with everybody else, but I do want to go on the record. I feel Tim's got a bit of a bad rap here. He's extremely thorough in his reports that he presents to committee, and it is absolutely there in 1.3 that it was approved in March. So, Tim.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we get a proposal and a second on the table that we accept the application for the location and redesign the garage.
Let's just take a show of hands. It's not
Okay. Right. All in favour, show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Saved us 2 minutes.
Good idea. Chair, can I be permitted to, whilst I entirely agree with Richard Marshall, if you know what Tim, I did accept his apologies as graciously as I was.
Right. Item eight.
Sorry.
Item
I need
eight.
to go.
You need to go to the toilet, yeah, go on.
Or I can go home, whichever you prefer.
No. But item eight is the wild conversion of Taylor's Farm at Porter. This week we're going to come back, I shall hand the chair over to my vice chair, Nick Ignat.
Gone to the.
Oh,
the chair.
Not both.
No, it's.
He's been hearing it, so he
No.
has an interest.
Oh, you've got to, yeah, you're leaving the room. Okay.
No pressure, Nick, but don't mess up your debut.
Yeah.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did the- Yes, you did, yeah, that's right. It was that impressive, I've forgotten.
Question, do you like vehicles and
Yeah. We can't be sent to enjoy ourselves. You know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's definitely worth the visit.
Right.
Absolutely. To be honest, I haven't been able to make it because before the vision, I'd written down a problem.
Oh, right.
Now,
Really? Oh, right, okay.
Okay, thank you, members. We'll continue now with the meeting. Yeah, I'm Nick Hignett, and I'm vice chair of this committee, and I'll be taking over for this item on the agenda, item 8, which is the proposed residential barn conversion at the Hale Barns, Horton, Shropshire. I pass over now to planning officer to give their report.
Thank you, Chair. So members visited this site this morning. Beautiful area of Shropshire, wonderful expansive views. We're on the Corvedale and we're within the AONB. We're between the settlements of Corvedale and Diddlebury with access onto B4368 Corvedale Road. And the proposal involves conversion of an existing Dutch barn into 3 dwellings with the installation of packaged treatment plant, parking and turning areas. Each dwelling will be 2-storey and have 3 bedrooms. We're looking at about 1,000 square feet, which is about 110 square metres, I think. So not massive buildings. There have been 5 previous properties from 2 barns have been converted immediately adjoining this site to the southeast and southwest. I think members saw that those properties were different in that they were genuine vernacular barns, which were sensitively converted. I think that the key issue here really is the policy concern in relation to MD7A. This is the policy which sets out the criteria under which conversion of a barn or an existing building in a rural area can be accepted for residential purposes. And the policy basically requires that there should be an existing heritage element there, a kind of historic fabric, and that then there will be potential support for sensitively undertaken conversion. With a Dutch barn, you're dealing with an open-sided original structure with a kind of overtly agricultural appearance. But we saw that with this one, it had already been infilled with weatherboarding and chipboard on the inside, and it had been set out for storage uses for the 5 residential conversions of barns that were immediately adjoining it. And the question at the time that those barns were being converted was, well, should the Dutch barn be demolished entirely and so that it doesn't lead to the possibility of agricultural use resuming there with the consequent amenity issues, or is there likely to be a requirement for the residents to use that structure constructively for storage purposes? And the intention was that it should be used for storage use and that there would be a bin store recycling area within it, and hence obviously we're within the AONB, but the historic environment team supported it because it was leading to a nice tidy storage solution. We weren't going to be getting residential paraphernalia spilling out around the edges of the developments and becoming potentially visible within the AONB, or just encroaching on the intrinsic qualities of the AONB. So that's why the historic environment team didn't object when the storage use came in. However, it's been a couple of years, 3 years in fact, since the barns were converted, and it has become apparent that the storage use is certainly underutilised. We walked into an empty storage area in our site visit. So the applicant has come back and asked whether this would be appropriate now for residential conversion. The only other option being demolition. The building has been, I say, weatherboarded. It's contained. What the proposals involve, if we could just move forward a bit, if I do that, is to put fenestration in effectively on the second floor to treat the kind of apertures on the ground floor. So we still have the Dutch barn with its sort of curving roof and the steel girders on the outside, but we have three dwellings separately within 110 square metres each, or thereabouts. So from a purely policy perspective, this doesn't meet the criteria for MD7A because we're dealing with an initial structure which, whilst it's been amended, it isn't really of the sort that would be expected to be supported for a conversion because it has no heritage merit. So we've had an intermediate step where it's been converted into a storage use, which has then proved not to be appropriate. But we visited the site this morning, and the opposite position clearly supports the policy that we don't want to encourage conversion of these types of structure. But I think there is a kind of more kind of nuanced idea when you actually look at it in its setting and ask, well, is it going to harm the setting of the existing barn structures? Will it harm the AONB? Is it possible to contain it in a way that that it isn't going to infringe on those interests? And the officer position, strictly following the advice from the historic environment team, is no, it doesn't meet MD7A, and therefore we can't support it. But as I say, it's precisely why it's referred to committee, because the contrary position between officers and the parish council, and members will be hearing from the Dewsbury Parish Chair in a minute, his written statement, and they support it. And as I say, it's a balance where the members feel that the harm potentially to the policy, to the setting of the non-designated barns, and to the harm in not complying overtly with MD7A is outweighed in this instance by, could be justified. So I say, well, that's really all I want to just say. We did talk about if it was approved, there were. Sorry, I've gone beyond. I'll have to go back in. There was an issue with opposing windows between one of the existing elevations of the barn opposite and the facing windows of the proposed upstairs of the property with one of the gables to the southeast. It is just, I think, beyond the 21 metre normally adopted distance. But I think that we would need to look at sort of fenestration arrangements and what have you. But the bottom line is the officer position is we don't support it, but the onus is on the committee to decide whether or not it sees there is a justification in this instance for not accepting the officer recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now we have a statement from David Hedgley, Clerk, Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hedgley writes, my apologies for not attending in person as I usually do, but it's my 25th wedding anniversary and my wife's 65th birthday. No. Dewsbury Parish Council supported this application. They've worked closely with the developer throughout the site's development stages and are very pleased that the site merges into the landscape and has preserved its heritage landscape value. Councillors visited the site to discuss options once the residents didn't want the Dutch barn as storage areas and a new use for the barn was needed. These options included do nothing, deterioration of the barns as before, possible workshops or holiday lets, increased traffic noise for residents, or convert to rental housing, much needed in the area. DPC has worked closely with Corfton's residents over planning issues, and except for one objection, not two as recorded in the report, there were no negative comments from local residents. Any visit to the site would amply show that it would not be overdevelopment of a very thoughtfully laid out development which would have gardens extended behind the barn. We dispute the conservation comments re MD7A Sandler. The barn fits in with the heritage and landscape of the site, and reflects its farming heritage, as do the other retained buildings, and are of merit regarding heritage landscape value. There will be minimal alterations regarding new work, with the overall retention of the cladding and barn roof, with only doors and windows inserted, and overall the barn will retain its original form and appearance. Regarding AONB, the barn is mainly hidden from the road, but along with the rest of the site blends perfectly into the rural landscape and looks part of it. It certainly would not be detrimental to the rural amenities of the area, as the parish desperately needs more rental units. All the original units are rented and occupied. This is a sustainable development which has seen a derelict farming site reborn and providing life to the community. One new resident is seeking to become a school governor at Corvedale Primary School, for example. For the above reasons, DPC believe that this application should be supported.
Thank you. And to keep Miranda busy, we've now got a statement to be read out by local member, Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Motley writes as follows. I am surprised by the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Anyone visiting the site would recognise that the now disused Dutch barn has an integral relationship with the two stone hail barns originally used for livestock as a hay straw storage barn for the animals. The location of the Dutch barn behind the Hales barns is not over prominent in the AONB landscape, which slopes upwards towards Wenlock Edge. It has stood there for over 100 years, is not highly visible from the road, and clearly reflects the pattern of farming in those times. When Hales barns were completed, the applicant offered the tenants the option of renting the Dutch barn for storage, which they all declined as they did not need extra space. Then he considered converting the barn for residential purposes into 3 rental properties. At all times he worked closely with Diddlebury Parish Council, as stated in the Chairman's representation, which, as you know, supports this application. I understand there's only been one objection from a member of the local community. We have a desperate need for rental properties in the Corvedale division. Houses to buy in the area are either large in their own right, or cottages extended into 4 or 5 bedroom houses and well out of the price range of local people. Rental properties, whether private or housing association, are scarce. This is a common problem in South Shropshire, but very acute in this rural division. Therefore, we should be encouraging imaginative schemes such as this one, which not only preserve heritage assets, but also enable rentals rather than yet more holiday lets. With regard to the officer's reasons for refusal, CS5 allows development proposals on appropriate sites which maintain and enhance countryside vitality and improve sustainability of rural communities. The need for rental properties is outlined above, and sustainability of the community will be enhanced, particularly if families with children move in and use our local schools. CS17 would be met by protecting and enhancing the high quality and local character of Shropshire's natural, built and historic environment. MD7A has been well covered by David Hedgley in his comments. And finally, MPPF 11 states that applications should positively seek opportunities to meet the development needs of their areas, in this case rental accommodation, and be sufficiently flexible to adapt to rapid changes. Clearly, the applicant is achieving this in his switch from storage to residential in this case. Finally, the conversion from storage to residential can be achieved with minimal impact on the other barns. Layout with regard to parking and individual garden spaces is sensitively planned and does not intrude on the existing barns. And whilst the Dutch barn may look somewhat new at present, it retains its original shape, and the weatherboarding will blend into its setting as it ages. It is also worth noting that there were a number of Dutch barns along the Corvedale Road, which have been similarly weatherboarded and blend in well with their surroundings, so this is part of the local vernacular. This is an imaginative use of a heritage asset which will go some way towards meeting the serious lack of rental properties available in the Corvedale. It has been carefully thought through, will provide amenity space for the tenants, and I would ask the Planning Committee to support this application.
Thank you, Miranda. Officer, do you want to come back and make any other comments?
With your permission, Chair, just wanted to make a point. The application is for open market dwellings. It's not for affordable dwellings. So if they're acceptable to, if members were to find that they wanted to approve the application and they are acceptable as dwellings, there is no mechanism, and there would be no mechanism for ensuring that they remained as rental properties. So you can't give weight to that matter in your considerations. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I open the debate now to members. Oh,
yeah.
Or is that? I'm sorry, beg your pardon.
Flip over your page.
Oh, I didn't do that. Okay, my apologies. So we'll go now to the agent, please, to speak, and you have 3 minutes. Applicant, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Hello, my name is Jack Ridley, and I'm the applicant for the application to change the Dutch barn at the Hale Barns from a storage building for the residents living at the Hale Barns into 3 properties to rent. I've lived in Diddlebury all my life. I've always been interested in the renovation of old buildings, giving them a new life and preserving them for the future. In 2018, my father, Patrick Quigley, agreed to let me renovate the Hale Barn buildings. These are located in the middle of Pinstones Farm. There were 2 large brick and stone buildings, 3 Dutch barns and 2 steel barns. They were all built around 1900 and used as a milking parlour. But with changes in modern farming, they had become derelict and were being used by the tenant farmer just for agricultural storage. I created a small team of local carpenters and ground workers and have successfully restored over 3 years the Hale Barns into the 5 houses. These are all now rented out, and my team of craftsmen are still working with me. All of the outbuildings, apart from 1 Dutch barn, had to be destroyed to allow for the renovation of the Hale Barns. However, I wanted to restore the last remaining Dutch barn in order to show how important these Dutch barn buildings were originally in storing fodder for cows at the Hale Barns milking parlour. And I thought that the residents would want to rent the storage bays for extra storage space. However, after the Dutch barn was fully restored, the residents living at the Hale Barns all said that they would not be interested in renting out any of the storage bays. I therefore spoke with the parish council about an alternative use, so the newly restored Dutch barns did not remain unused long term, likely on getting rats and other vermin. It was agreed that the best change of use, which was least disruptive for the community living at the Hale Barns, would be a change of use from storage to residential use, similar to the other properties at the Hale Barns. This proposed change of use into 3 dwellings was supported at the Diddlebury Parish Council meeting, and it has been supported by the other residents living at the Hale Barns. The proposed conversion into 3 2-bedroom houses for rent would be sympathetic and in keeping with the Hale Barns. It would also provide more rental accommodation in the Corvedale, which is desperately needed. The majority of new houses built in the area are large detached properties for sale. I hope you will support my application, which will give the historic Dutch barn building a use and will help to provide good quality homes for rent in the local area. I have also a late representation, which I've been asked to read out by Colin Richards, MBE.
Mr. Wrigley, your 3 minutes time is up, so unless it's a very short one sentence statement.
It's 2 paragraphs. So.
Okay, no, we'll leave it there then. Thank you. Okay, so I now open this debate to councillors and members, and I'll start with Councillor Tony Parsons, please.
Yes, thank you. I think that this application really showed the benefit of site visits. Absolutely, because having read the report prior to this meeting, I was leaning towards rejecting this application. But if you see this site, then I'm sure it will change all of your minds. It is in a most beautiful spot. The work that's already been done on the barns is excellent, high quality work. And the beauty of this site is it is not close to any other buildings in the main, and it is hidden by the countryside, trees on one side of the side of the barn. I think as well, just to make the point that Graham was making earlier, if this application is successful, it will prevent that barn being demolished and the risk of a return to agricultural land. And so I would certainly support this proposal, and I'll move that.
Thank you. So next I have Councillor Richard Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Policies are put in place so we get uniform decisions when it comes to planning. But in fairness, I'm almost going to be accused of being a cheerleader for the officers today, because I feel for the position that they're in with this, because they have to go for refusal because it doesn't meet the policies. However, I do think it's very, very important that local people do get a say in what happens locally with development and planning. And obviously this is supported very much by the local people. Diglesbury Parish Council spoke highly of the scheme. So therefore, with that said, I think there are times where we have to be a little bit flexible, where the officers can't be, they're governed by the policies, we can be as the committee. So therefore, I would happily second Tony Parsons' proposal to accept.
Yeah.
Can I just speak?
Yes, go ahead. That's it.
Thank you, Chair. Hear what members are saying. You've hit the nail on the head exactly right. From an officer's perspective, this doesn't meet policy, because in and of itself, the building is not a designated heritage asset. The barns are non-designated heritage assets. So all I would say is if and there's a clear motion to grant approval and second it, I think it would be useful just to tie down, if we can, what the special circumstances here that are leading to a decision to allow conversion of a non-designated heritage asset, because without that special circumstances, it does set a precedent. So yeah, I just think if we can have a bit of clarity around that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you. Just a few points and perhaps a question for the officers. To start with, to embrace what the applicant is saying, he mentioned Colin Richards. Colin Richards was the Conservation Officer for South Shropshire District Council and was our leading conservation officer here. And when we first went unitary, he is well renowned within his work and his work for Prince Charles. And if this application has his support, enough is said for myself. Tim, a lot of agricultural buildings get permitted development. Would this not fall into that?
It's difficult to say without having the proposal before you, but it has to meet a number of tests.
Right.
And one of those tests is that it was last in use for agricultural purposes. Now,
it was not. It was storage.
I think
if the applicant put a sheep in it for a few years, that happens. Okay. Furthermore, I think Councillor Motley's report, or what she actually said, actually covers a lot of our policy issues in relation to the recommendation to support this. And I think if we refer to them, it may help us moving forward.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hilary Love.
Thank you. Yeah, having done the site visit today, was really impressed with the proposal of the 3 properties. I support what everyone is saying here, but I would like to see a condition put on that is kept for local people initially, so that for maybe a 10-mile, people need to be living within a 10-mile radius, and they should be getting the first option, and that the property is offered to locals in the first instance.
Officers, if you want to come back on that.
Speak up, which is not.
Yeah, if I can, the properties are not large, they're a kind of reasonable size. I think that this means that they are not going to be unaffordable in the local context and going rental rates. So I think that we're not talking about affordable dwellings and the undoubted benefits there, but we are talking about open market properties which are of a certain size that they will not actually be unaffordable to the local population. We've heard that there is a great deal of demand from Diddleby Parish Council's chair has mentioned that. So I think that it may be that housing demands, if members were minded to go against the officer recommendations, that local housing need would be part of that. There are a number of conditions that officers would need to impose if that was the position. I'm happy to read out a list of those should that be acceptable. I think if we have a delegated mandate on that. So.
Yeah, do you want to come back on that, Eloise?
Yeah, please. Thank you. I just feel that very much that we're bending the rules with the conservation, and it should definitely be going to local people. I mean, a couple of local professionals will probably be able to afford them, whereas somebody coming down from London would possibly offer a lot more rent, and that might be very attractive to the landlord. And it should be, we should be keeping them in line for local people, not necessarily for affordable, but for local people. If others are in agreement with that.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just come back on that point? It's essentially what you're looking to do is to make them affordable dwellings,
right?
And that would require a Section 106 agreement. It's not what the applicant's applying for. I mean, members could come to that resolution if that's what they required, but obviously, should the applicant choose, he doesn't have to enter into that agreement, and he could. And therefore he'd either end up with a refusal because he hasn't entered the agreement, or he could appeal against non-determination. Just so, and what the affordable housing policy says and requires in terms of a 106 is, yes, you have that initial local need identified, and they should meet that very local need initially, but there is a cascade effect that widens it out over time if that need doesn't arise. So you would have to have that written in. You couldn't do that by a condition. It would need to be a kind of a bespoke Section 106 agreement, and that's not what he's applying for. So you're changing the nature of the application.
Yeah. If I could just add to that, I mean, an affordable housing Section 106 essentially has two key elements. And one is who can have those properties, which is the bit that you've just heard referred to, and that cascade criteria. And the other is the amount that they can be rented or sold for. So I guess members could conceivably on this suggest that you would agree this with a bespoke Section 106 agreement that had the local criteria that you're looking for, but without necessarily the affordability, the money side of it, which so that you would be able to have an open market price, but only offered initially to local people. I'm not advocating, I'm just saying I think it is possible to draw up an agreement that would do that, or you could say, well, we'll only agree to this if it's an affordable property in accordance with our usual policy, and that those are therefore some of the special circumstances that you're looking for to go against the adopted policy of this nature. But as you've heard, that isn't actually what the applicant's applying for.
If I can just make a comment here, I listened to the applicant, and the applicant seemed to have a very good relationship with the local parish council, and I would suggest that maybe we could put something like a recommendation in, depending on which way we went on this anyway, that he worked closely with the parish council to try and support local needs. I would suggest that. And just going back to the debate, then I go to Councillor Caroline Barton.
Thank you. I think just adding to the conversation about the affordability thing, I think what we have to
remember, of course, is that this is quite an isolated position, and so anybody living there is going to need at least one vehicle, possibly two if there's a couple living there, and that might mean that, you know, that it is out of reach of people who need affordable housing. But that's one side. I was very impressed this morning by the quality of the work that had already been done on the barns on this site. And if I have any regret, it is that the plans that we were shown, the images that we were shown, really don't do credit to the barn itself. I think the drawings that we saw make it look very cramped and so on, whereas in fact I think it's going to be a very attractive building. And I think we also need to consider the fact that it can't be seen from the road. It isn't, you know, it doesn't create a blot on the landscape. It fits in quite comfortably, I think, with the buildings around it, and I certainly would be minded to support this.
Thank you. Yeah, just go back to Councillor Butler wants to make a point.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really good to have the debate. My concern is, and I do totally understand Councillor Luff's opinion around affordability and local people, but at the end of the day, we also need to consider the applicants, what the applicant has told us, that he is working with, and Councillor Bagnall has said, you know, what he's done already is done to a very high design, high quality. That doesn't come cheap. Now, if you want a heritage asset to maintain in the community, we've also heard, sorry to go backwards, that one of the tenants in his recent developments is going to become a school governor, local connections, local person, etc. The properties have probably been in the family for a number of years, whether tenanted or not. I think on this occasion, we should not tie the applicant up with rules and regulations of what and where and why, but we should actually appreciate their integrity of bringing this to the table in the first place, because they could just let it go derelict. And I would leave it as it is. So.
Okay, it's going to go to Councillor Robert Tyndall now, and then I'm hoping to go to the vote, please.
Yes, quickly, it's almost exactly what William has just said, but I'm not going to repeat what he said. It's just that if you look, and I'm speaking as a virtually retired landlady, if you insist that there are affordable rents, then the return that the developer will get will be very poor, especially if he's converting them to a high standard. And they're not being piggybacked onto a larger development where houses are being sold at open market prices, and then you have your little bonus of some affordable dwellings. I think, I'm sorry, it is the same one that William was making, but perhaps
you're
maybe something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, go on, if you want to come back on a point.
Yeah, well, I just want to make the point that it wasn't so much affordable, it was for local people that I was wanting to, I want to see them go to, for local people to have the opportunity to rent them. That's my point.
Trust the integrity of the applicant personally.
Yeah, Tony, do you want to make a quick point before we go to officers?
I just wanted to suggest some potential reasons as to why we are going against policy, if you like. One, this is in the AONB. The AONB have not objected to this change. They've given a standard response. None of the residents in the 5 occupied dwellings that were the barns, none of the 5 have objected to this development. A lot of this work is being done by skilled craftsmen living close by in the county. I think some were from Craven Arms and elsewhere. And again, I would stress that by developing this into living accommodation, it does potentially prevent a problem further down the line of that area and the field behind it reverting to agricultural use, which would then put a potentially a nuisance on the 5 dwellings that are already in existence.
Yeah, thank you. Officers, do you want to come back on any points before we?
Just Chair, here you're going to take a vote. I think we've got reasons to work with there in terms of members' discussion and also the comments made by local member and the parish council. So I think we've got something we can work with there. Were members minded to approve it, just for a point of procedure, we are then seeking, if members are to approve, that delegated authority to impose the appropriate list of conditions.
Can you just read below? Yes, he does.
Okay.
If I may, Chair,
Just to read them out.
so we have the standard condition on commencement. We have a condition to define the scheme. We have a requirement for sample details for the wood for the doors and fenestration. We have a requirement for landscaping scheme. We have a requirement for vehicle parking and turning layouts with retention of that through the development. We have no additional new lighting, which is a backed condition. We have a foul and surface drainage condition. Finally, perhaps reflecting the debate, we have an advisory note advocating a local homes for local people dialogue with the parish council, and that effectively is what we would translate into more detailed wording, Chair. Can I just add again, I think because these are not large units, there is a self-limiting element. It's not as if people from London are going to come up and want to buy them as, you know, large holiday. They are functional living accommodation. You look at the internal layouts, they are designed for families, and as such inherently they are more affordable. There is also going to be there is already a connection. The applicant mentioned on site that had already been contacted by interested local prospective occupants on this. So I think that the local occupancy issue is to some extent self-limiting based on the applicant's networking credentials and the nature of the properties.
Yep. Committee, I'm not happy with the one about the local policy with the parish council. I do understand the parish council did agree at the moment. It's a first class parish council, as we all know, parish councils come and they go. And I would urge you to just leave it to the integrity of the action.
It was an informative, not a condition.
Oh, right. I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Okay. So answer that, yeah. If you're happy with the, you've got the name of the proposal and second.
Yeah.
No,
I propose. A second.
Yeah.
Councillor Parson against the Marshall.
Okay, so I'm happy for the man to take a vote.
Thank you.
So Councillor Bagnall,
Approve.
Councillor Butler,
For.
Councillor Hignett,
For.
Councillor Luff, Councillor Lumbey,
For.
Councillor Marshall,
For.
Councillor Parsons,
For.
Councillor Tyndall.
For.
Thank you all.
Chairman, will you forgive me? I really. Yes.
I reckon we'll be near the 20 seats. I'm devastated around it.
She needs a smaller screen.
Don't you want it on camera?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well done, Will.
That's all right.
Item number 9, the fund, but if not, what you pay church then?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hopefully, I think this is going to be a bit quicker than the previous items, but hopefully. It relates, it's a listed building application for works to what is clearly a heritage asset, grade 2 listed building to the farm at Lee Botwood. The reason it's before the committee today is that the applicant is Shropshire Council, and it's not a statutory function of the council. The application is to replace several windows and doors in the property. That's the property as existing. I'll just run you through these.
Officer, can I take advice, please?
Yeah.
As portfolio holder for finance, should I raise an interest here and leave the room? Because you're spending my money.
I don't think that's really
Okay.
relevant, is it?
I know I can't vote for anything that Shropshire Council spending on.
Okay, well, don't
Budget.
vote then.
Okay, I won't enter the fund stage.
Okay, so those are the existing elevations. As you see, some of those windows are not well. All of those windows probably are not original windows. They've been replaced over the years. The intention is to replace them with these windows, which will probably be more in keeping with what was there originally. And there's also the door, the replacement of 2 doors as well. So that's all it is. The recommendation is for 3 doors. Sorry, the recommendation is for approval, and that's all I intend to say at this point, Chair.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, so I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation and grant approval.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, should we go around, all in favour, please?
Abstain.
Thank you. One abstention. Item number 10, 71 Stalemate Workshop.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this was a property that members visited kind of early afternoon, actually, when we were out on site. It's an application for conversion of a building at Snail Beach into 2 self-contained holiday lets. Just to explain, since the meeting, I have had a conversation with the case officer, who is happy that the building, the original building, is still in situ. It has been kind of encased in some more modern work, none of which in itself required planning permission, and that the original building was of the same size as the building currently proposed. The proposal is to create the second access off the main road, when I say main, off the highway, and not off the junction as it currently is constructed. That in itself has been the result of an enforcement complaint. But importantly, also members raised the issue of the hedge along the front, and the recommendation to approve does include a requirement to lower that hedge to a height which would allow visibility along the whole of the frontage. So you will see that hopefully that will improve the situation in terms of the existing accesses. I'll just run quickly through the proposal. As you saw, the intention is to provide 2 parking spaces in the area that was already there to the northeast of the building, and a single car parking space off the new access to the southwest of the building. That's the unit to the north, in the northern part of the building, is a 2-bedroom unit. There's a smaller unit in the southern part, which is a single bedroom unit, hence the difference in the car parking spaces. That's the workshop as it is presently, and those are the proposed elevations. So, well, you've seen the boarding, etc., has already been carried out. So it's in part retrospective, the application in respect of materials and detail. And that plan shows the floor plans as proposed. So you'll see the left-hand side is the larger unit as you're looking at that plan. Contains two bedrooms and a bathroom and a kitchen dining area. The other unit is a single bedroom with a kitchen, dining, living, and a small bathroom. I think, Chair, that's all I intend to say. Oh, sorry, yes, as Miranda just pointed out, there is an update representation on the update sheet, which I don't have in front of me.
Which is now gone off my screen.
I think it refers to, it raises a query over the red line boundary for the site. So if members do resolve to grant permission, I think it would need to be subject to us clarifying that the red line boundary is correct and that there isn't any issue with the site ownership as it's shown within the application. Chair.
Right.
You look at me.
Yeah, I did. I'm happy to speak. Yeah, I think this is a really difficult site. It's very, very close to the road. There is no view to be had apart from one of the windows. You know, all the other windows are looking out onto a roof of a building. It's extremely overlooked because there are properties on elevated sites behind this property. It's also quite a relatively narrow road. I gather that it's quite a fast road, and so vehicles moving on and moving onto the road. There's a potential for accidents and so on. I just feel quite uncomfortable about this. I can't see that it's a site that anybody would want to go and have a holiday in unless every other holiday cottage in the county was booked up. Having said that, that's not a planning reason. It's it is obviously up to the individual. So, but I find that, well, I don't think from what I've seen, I would have concerns about access onto the road, about visual community, and about privacy.
Yeah, I thought, again, this was another definite must for having a site visit, because it was a wholly unexceptional building. It didn't really look to offer much to the tourist trade, I wouldn't have thought. And I have some concerns about traffic movement on and off the site, but I'm neutral on it, I think.
Thank you, Joe. I do echo what was said about the importance of a site visit for something like this, because it was unexceptional. I mean, one of the comments objecting from one member of the public said that there's no evidence of need for further holiday accommodation. The local pub is already busy, so does not require more trade. I'm very happy if I was the public. They always need more trade, of course. I just think it's wholly unacceptable for holiday lets. It's a wooden shed directly on the side of the road. Regardless of what they do to the inside or the outside, the situation of it, whether that's a relevant planning consideration, I don't know, but it doesn't sit comfortably as a holiday let, never mind a whole time accommodation. There would be light pollution, there would be noise late at night, perhaps from holiday makers who aren't concerned because they're going back to wherever they come from the next day. I think some of the neighbouring properties would be not happy with having holiday lets there with different people coming and going. And I just think there are quite a few reasons why that I know we need, with staycations in the next year or two probably continuing to increase. We do need more holiday lets, but this isn't a place that I would want to go and stay.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I didn't go on the site visit. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it this morning. I wish in some hours I had. I'm looking through the report, and I believe Councillor Bagnall's removed her application for the marketing agent. I'm looking at it. I know Worthing very well, and I must admit I wouldn't go on holiday there. There's nothing really around there. And I'm reading some of the stuff from the parish council as well, Worthing Parish Council. They're concerned obviously with noise late at night. I'm listening to what people are saying. Well, I'd like to ask the officers, obviously, and I've read through the report, you're putting forward for acceptance. What's your primary grounds of why this should be approved?
Because we've got policies which encourage the provision of tourism in sustainable locations. I mean, it's within a settlement. You can't say that it's not within a settlement. It's within a reasonable reach of a pub. It's on the, there's a network of footpaths around there that people can make use of. Yeah. It's using an existing building. It's not creating something from scratch. It's not actually a timber building. There is a brick skin in there. They've clad it in timber, and it's not particularly attractive as it is. It will weather over time. But I hear all of what you say. Some of which I don't disagree with. Some I would disagree with. I think the fact that they would be lowering the hedge along the road frontage, as well as increasing safety for the access, would afford better views from within the site, and you saw that it's quite elevated, so you would get views over routes. So it could be made quite attractive. Remove the green container, etc. There would there would be steps that you could take to make it more attractive. Again, in terms of the highway access, as I've pointed out on the site visit, there are a number of other private driveways that require you to back onto or off that highway. It is quite narrow, and that in itself should restrict traffic speeds. It's reasonably busy. I have to admit, it was busier than I expected along that road, but traffic wasn't travelling at particularly high speeds. It's single carriageway with in parts, so there are places where two vehicles can't pass, and that slows down traffic in and of itself. So I agree, it's not somewhere particularly that I would want to holiday at, but at the right price and with people, people's other interests, it might be something that could be attractive to people. So that's the problem.
Thank you. I can't see from the report, Tim, but does each unit have outside space?
It's very limited. It's very limited outside space. It's very steeply banked towards the back. There is an area for the one unit where this has a green container sitting on it at the moment. If
from somebody who's in the industry of holiday lets, but not in Shropshire, the first thing any agent will ask you, have they got outside space to sit outside, and also to put a washing line. But also, I do take the fact that people would possibly rent it because they'll want to come and see the stars, because they all live in cities and there's all streetlights. But that's by the by. My main concern with this actual application is if it isn't attractive and it hasn't got the outside space, these will end up as 6-month short-hold tenancies and will be on the enforcement procedures. They'll become an annex to the house. That would be my, and if they want it as a holiday let, I'd much prefer it to come back as one unit with one drive and more outside space.
I did it. So to cancel up next.
I was just going to say.
Thank you. I went and had a look today at it, and I wouldn't probably want to go and stay there, but having said that, there is a lot of walking, and I don't think the people that would be renting a property like that, they would probably just turn up with bikes and be wanting to go.
Be sleeping there, that's it, yeah.
That'd be sleeping in it, and that would be it. And they won't be. I don't think it's going to go to the kind of people who are going to be wanting to be drinking and making a loud noise at night. That wouldn't attract. But it would probably be really useful to someone who wanted to go biking, or walking. And there's lots of walks around there, and isn't it up to the landlord to decide whether it's, I mean, he's putting the investment in, and it's his problem if he can't rent it out. I hear what you're saying about possibly becoming short-term rent, but then I'm sure they'll very quickly tell us in Snails Beach if that's happening, and then it'll become an enforcement.
Yeah, I think Councillor Lough really hit the nail on the head with that, and it's actually what I was going to say. The officers have recommended it because it's policy compliant. It's the commercial decision of the applicant on whether it's worth it or not. And okay, we can laugh and joke and say we wouldn't want to stay there. But as Councillor Butler said, some people may just want to sleep there and look at the stars. So I think if it is policy compliance, if there's any way that we could build in something that they are just used for holiday lets and don't become short-term accommodation, is that something we could possibly build in?
We've got, yeah, got condition, we will have conditions. Yeah, it's condition 7. It requires that the accommodation hereby permitted shall only be occupied by holidaymakers whose main residence is elsewhere. The owner operator of the holiday accommodation enterprise shall maintain an up-to-date register of occupiers and their home addresses and shall make this available to the local planning authority at any reasonable time. So,
I would just the point that Willem raised about the outside space, certainly for the bigger one on the left-hand side, I think all the outside space available was there to be used for car parking. There was nothing else. But on the other side, where the green container is, there may be more space there. But having said all of that, I'm going to move that we accept this application because whatever we personally feel about it, it is compliant, and therefore I'll move that it's accepted.
Second, yeah. All in favour, show of hands. That's unanimous. Right, the next item 12 is schedule of appeals. Which are noting they've all been dismissed.
yeah, don't say anything on that, Chair. I think there's 7 appeal decisions there, all of which have been dismissed, so that we've found in favour of the council, which is good.
Yeah.
It's good.
This shows what good job you're doing.
Yeah. Right. Next item is number 13, date of next meeting, 28th of June, 2 o'clock at Town Hall. I'd just like to thank the officers and everyone for their hard work getting into it. Thank you, the committee, for starting with this and the hard work deep into it. And sorry it's like finishing, but I would say, Joe,
Thank you. Thank you.